All right, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see everyone gathered here today. My name is Colin from BCA, and I will be your MC this morning. In just a few minutes' time, we will see and hear some of the most influential built environment leaders speak to us. So let's put on our leadership thinking caps, and I hope all of you are raring to start this summit. And for your information, we'll be using Pigeonhole for our Q&A in the panel discussion later. So if you look at your screens right now, for those of you online as well, you should be able to see the QR code as well as the password to access our Pigeonhole Live. So just access the QR code and then key in the passcode that's displayed right now on the screens in front of you. And you'll be able to post your questions as well as vote for questions that you would like the panel to address. Yep, so all of you can bring out your phones, not your name cards anymore, but your phones, and you can scan the QR code. Once again, key in the password, and you can post your questions for the panel discussion later. Good morning, Mr. Sim Lim, BCA Chairman, Group Executive, Consumer Banking and Wealth Management at DBS Bank. Leaders of the built environment, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BuildSG Lead Summit 2022. A round of applause, please. Thank you. It's a little too soft. I guess you all can do better. Louder round of applause, especially from the back. The back, yes. I need you guys. I can see you clearly. Yes, good. Thank you. It's quite emotional for me because it's really been some time. I'm sure you guys also would know. We just relaxed our measures. And it's really been some time since I see an audience of 600 built environment leaders gathered here and another 800 of you online to discuss on two key issues today, two key themes today. One is on resilience and the second on innovation. Now, building resilience is very important and very critical for the growth of our industry, as well as the recovery of our industry. And of course, investing in innovation today will definitely put us ahead and prepare us for the future. So once again, a very warm welcome to all of you on this beautiful morning at Suntec City Hybrid Experience Center. And it is my absolute pleasure to be here and to be with all of you to host this event. To begin, I'd like to share the program lineup for this morning. We'll first start with our BCA Industry Work Plan 2022, where we'll be sharing on our policy directions, our new policy directions, as well as the strategic focus for the year. We will then segue into our first panel discussion. Where we will look at where our panel members will look at the growth and transformation of the built environment. After the networking break, all right, my favorite segment, we will then have another keynote sharing at sharpening our innovative edge to grow and to transform. After which, we will commence our final panel discussion, which will focus on the new era of innovation and can bring about many new opportunities and contribute to the future of Singapore's economy. So with that, I'm excited. I hope you guys too, and I hope every one of us will look forward to an enriching and insightful morning. Our guest of honor, Mr. Tan Kiet Hao, Minister of State for Ministry of National Development and Ministry of Communications and Information, has a last-minute overseas trip and could not join us this morning. But not to worry, because we quickly recorded his opening address. So ladies and gentlemen, let's set our eyes on the screen and hear it out from MOS Tan.
Mr. Lim Sim Seng, Chairman of BCA, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a warm welcome to the BuildSG Lead Summit. I would like to meet all of you in person. Unfortunately, I'm away on an official trip. I'm glad to still be able to share some of my thoughts with you today. The Lead Summit is an important platform. It brings leaders like you together to encourage the sharing of best practices and learning amongst the community. This year's theme of building towards an innovative economy, Be Ahead, is a play of words. It sets out our ambition for this sector to be ahead. Even as we look ahead, I would like to first acknowledge the challenges that we have faced in the last couple of years. When COVID-19 first broke out, almost all construction works grinded to a halt. Even after a circuit breaker, resumption of activities was gradual. With border restrictions and lockdowns around the world, firms grappled with manpower shortages and supply disruptions. Projects were delayed, and firms had to cope with tight cash flows, often digging into their reserves. I thank all of you for your support and cooperation in overcoming these difficulties together. We are not yet out of the woods, but we are in a much better position today. The public health situation has improved. Border measures have eased, allowing worker inflows to resume. We are closely monitoring the impact on our sector arising from the Ukraine-Russia conflict, but we are seeing encouraging signs of recovery. Construction output across the industry has almost reached pre-COVID levels. While we have turned a corner, let us not forget the lessons learned. I would like to offer two takeaways. First, COVID-19 has shown how the various parts in our built environment ecosystem are closely intertwined. Whether you are a developer, a consultant, a builder, a specialist trade, a facility manager, or even a regulator, we are all in the same boat, and a leak in one area will affect everyone on board. We got through this crisis not by pointing fingers and assigning blame, but by coming together, rolling up our sleeves to solve common challenges for mutual benefit. For instance, when travel restrictions were imposed, many developers stepped up to share increased manpower and project prolongation costs with their contractors. QPs also put in extra effort to adapt to the evolving situation, helping to revise technical drawings and designs. The government also played our part by supporting the sector through measures like the $1.36 billion construction support package, foreign worker levy waivers and rebates, and the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act. There are many more examples of how one party leaned forward to help another. I hope that we can keep this spirit of working together. Let us build on this foundation, continue to break down silos and find ways of working together for greater impact. COVID-19 is just one crisis, and there are many more hills to climb as we transform this sector. This brings me to my second point on resilience. When COVID-19 struck, the industry was able to leverage past investments in productivity measures. These partially mitigated disruptions. Consultants and contractors were able to shift part of their work online because of digital platforms and tools. Some on-site work could continue with SMMs thanks to the adoption of automation and prefabrication. However, more needs to be done. We need to accelerate efforts towards less manpower-intensive work processes to reduce our reliance on manual labor. We need to effectively use technology to overcome traditional constraints and build deeper capabilities. This way, we can retain our competitiveness and better prepare for the next crisis, which is a matter of when and not if. In fact, one of the participants of the Lead Horizon program I spoke to recently said that, and I quote, "Innovation is not risky. Not innovating is riskier," unquote. To guide our effort, we are refreshing our transformation plan under the Future Economy Council. This subcommittee is co-chaired by Mr. Liam Wee Sin from UOL Group Limited and me. Over the past year, we have been engaging stakeholders across the sector. We are putting the plan together and will share more details on the Construction Industry Transformation Map ITM 2025 later this year. But let me just touch on one important feedback received. Almost all stakeholders shared with us that there is a pressing need to rebrand the industry to attract and retain Singaporeans. Some have even framed this issue as an existential one for their profession. For example, they shared with me that their younger staff want better working conditions, more developmental opportunities, exciting projects to challenge them, and see meaning in what they do. I think these are reasonable aspirations. We wanted the same for ourselves when we were in that stage of life, and we want the next generation to do better than our generation. So, this means that as a sector, we must rise to a challenge of meeting these aspirations through industry transformation and job redesign. This is the enduring way of changing the perception of BE sector jobs. We already know what needs to be done on the technical front: enhance automation, embrace digitalization, and engineer for sustainability. But the more difficult part is the softer aspect. For us to succeed in our transformation efforts, we need to build trust and develop the right culture. Leaders and leadership will be pivotal in this regard. I'm heartened that many of you are stepping up. Several BE firms have recently been acknowledged for their good HR practices. For instance, Kimley Construction received the Skills Future Employer Award for their commitment to lifelong learning and skills development for their staff. Firms like CapitaLand, CDL, Arup, KTC have also been recognized and featured as Singapore's top employers by the Straits Times. Leaders also helped to bring stakeholders together to achieve win-win outcomes and build up a foundation of trust. For example, when COVID-19 travel restrictions limited the inflow of workers, industry leaders came together to put in place an end-to-end process to help bring foreign workers into Singapore safely. Industry-led work groups also spearheaded solutions for the future. For instance, the Digitalizing BE Alliance for Action has established the Common Data Environment Data Standard to facilitate interoperability and information exchange. If I may suggest, BE leaders can continue to build trust at 3 levels. 1. With members of the public. We should continue to uphold highest level of professionalism within our sector. I'm sure all of us face significant budget and timeline pressures, but we must continue to build safely and not cut corners. This is essential to maintain a high level of public trust so that Singaporeans remain confident in the quality and safety of the buildings we design, build and maintain. 2. Across members of the BE value chain. The BE ecosystem is highly interdependent. For instance, suppliers facing disruption or rising material cost will affect contractors' work and delivery timelines for their developers. Stakeholders must therefore come together and work out win-win solutions to achieve collective project outcomes. We can consider how to share risk more equitably across different parts of the BE value chain when drawing up contracts. This way, no one part of the sector will be disproportionately affected in future crises. The government will play our part. Large public sector projects include fluctuation clauses for key materials so that costs can be shared. We encourage the rest of the BE sector to also do so. Finally, we can also do more to establish trust between employers and employees within our organizations. People are at the heart of our transformation efforts, and we need to bring them along this journey. Communication and engagement are key to help your staff understand the rationale for the changes and assuage their concerns and anxieties. I had a chance to speak to BE firms that are recognized to be among Singapore's top employers. In addition to communication, they also spoke about staff empowerment so that employees could drive change and innovation from the ground up. This includes providing developmental opportunities or making new tools available to them. One firm even established interdepartmental committees to champion innovative projects. In all these aspects, whether it's maintaining public trust in a sector, developing a collaborative relationship between firms within the BE sector, or nurturing a progressive, people-centric culture within our organizations, leadership is key. All of you are key. To conclude, let me commend your efforts thus far in navigating the industry through a very challenging period. We are not fully out of the woods, but are in a much stronger position compared to when COVID struck. With your support and leadership, I'm confident that we can transform our industry and take the sector to greater heights. I wish you a fulfilling conference. Thank you.
Thank you, MOS, for the opening address. I think he mentioned two key points for me. One is the level of trust, another is about leadership. So leadership is very important, and that's why we have the Leadership Summit here today. So once again, actually, I want you guys to give yourself a round of applause for yourselves who have worked hard over the past year in 2021. So a round of applause for yourselves as well. He spoke a lot about the level of trust, and I think we can leave all those questions to our panel discussions later. So let me invite first our first speaker for today, Mr. Kelvin Wong, Chief Executive Officer at the Building and Construction Authority, to deliver his presentation on the BCA Industry Work Plan. CEO, please.
Thanks. Always getting very clear and specific instructions from my teammates, and really appreciate it. Morning, everybody. It's so kind of good to be back here. I was just reflecting, it's my second time on stage on the Lead Summit, and the first time around was when I first came on board. So many things has happened, and it's really good to see everybody back here. And I think one of the things I really wanted to say is that I actually really want to thank everybody for your partnership, for your support, for your teamwork in going through the last 2 years. And I think really want to thank everybody, really want to say that I think everybody deserves a pat on their own back. You know, to really, I mean, while we are not totally out of the woods, but I think we did really, really well to get to where we are today, going through all the pain and horror in the last 2 years. So thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'll do a quick fly through. I think it's just to help provide the frame for our discussions for the rest of the morning. Like what Minister of State mentioned, I think this was what Colin was trying to tell me to get out of the way of the slides. No, we've been through quite a lot in the last 2 years, and you know, I was just reflecting, it wasn't so long ago where many of you and many of our workers had to go through the PCR, alternating with ART. So went through many episodes of pain. You know, we were able to also work with many partners to actually get into many of the India and Bangladesh to source for healthy workers. You know, and it's, I mean, I think, but the crisis really brought up many areas that as an industry we really need to work on. And I think while we have been aware of it previously, I think it became very stuck for us. And I think the sincere hope is that it will remain to be stuck in our minds, that these are really the long-term issues that we, together as an industry, really need to work on to make us stronger in the years to come. So for BCA, I think this will be the 3 areas of work that BCA will be focusing on in the foreseeable future, in the next 3 to 4 couple of years. It's broadly categorized into the transformation of the whole built environment sector as a key broad category. And then the need for us to really transform our regulations to ensure the safety and resilience of the sector. Not only are we a very urbanized state, we also have an aging infrastructure. So it's something that we have to pay attention to, also in the whole context of changing weather patterns, or maybe, you know, us seeing more severe weather patterns. And the third category is about leveraging or activating or meeting the needs of Singaporeans and our aspirations here in Singapore. This comes in the form of everybody wanting their own ideal homes, everybody want to have a more sustainable future, and also have a more inclusive working environment. There are many of that, but what I've reflected in the last 1 year, and I think something that we can do better, more of, is how do we activate the market? The market ought to be willing to pay a difference for better products, more sustainable products, and something that we want to pay more attention to. We've come a long way. One thing that I just forgot to mention is that, sitting there before coming on stage, actually, I'm really thankful that we are building on the efforts of giants in the industry, leaders, current leaders and past leaders, sitting beside Kim Yong, the Wohab family, and also seeing John Keong previously. So we are able to build on the efforts of many past and present leaders, giants, and friends. So, and we have come a long way in the last few years in terms of the areas that we've been working on as far as the last industry transformation map is concerned. And we were working on the 3 areas of integrated digital delivery, design for manufacturing assembly, and also green buildings. Okay, and actually in the last, just in the last 1 year, we launched the new refreshed Singapore Green Building Master Plan, where we talk about 80-80-80, and also launched a few new efforts and schemes to actually help push the industry and support the industry a bit more. And also hopefully put in place some of the broad-based schemes like automation, advanced digital solutions to help many of the broad-based SMEs in trying out some of the new automated solutions. In that category, I would say that we are learning. Because there are not that many solutions out there that are ready for deployment in the Singapore context. But yet, at the same time, there are some. I was visiting a site recently and see how laborious many of our workers are being deployed to do the tying of rebars, So I kind of cheekishly asked, how long does it take to tie the rebars? And they obviously give me a very nice answer. But you can tell it takes a long time. And actually, whether it's in the US or actually even locally, our friends in Kajima, they have actually tried out some of these portable, deployable tie boards, right, that can help tie. And I think these are some of the things that we do want to see how we can work with the equipment vendors, the technology providers, to strengthen their presence here so that we can support and make some of these solutions practical, usable, and affordable. So I just wanted to kind of spend a bit more time on this slide as well. I know sometimes when we come up with big categories, it sounds like quite conceptual, but I would say that I've been really, really encouraged with what we have been able to work with the industry on in the last 1.5 years, or maybe even much longer than that. The first category of this whole idea of integrated planning and design is really about us trying to, how we always hear from the industry that today, when a project is conceived, the way it's being designed and drawn is not very buildable, and it doesn't really integrate all the different, M&E systems. So there are all the clashes and all the abortive work that take place. And we've been talking about it using IDD as a platform to bring the industry together to collaborate up front. But actually beyond the digital platform, it's about actually the whole collaborative business partnerships that we can bring together, between the developers, the architects, the consultants, to the builders, how we can bring that together, collaborative work to conceive that project. And also the contractual terms, okay, the business terms, making sure that we have the right incentive in place. So this is a key area of work that we are working on. We've been pushing many of you partners out there. You know that we've been pushing this conversation. And I would say that we have been actually getting very encouraging feedback from the industry. And with the folks like CapitaLand, not sure whether Amor is here, but we are, hi. Thanks for all the support, and also the rest we are not ready to name yet. We are glad that we are able to finally take the step forward and to really demonstrate to the industry that we ought to engender a much healthier, much more collaborative relationship. Okay. The second one is really in terms of advanced manufacturing. We talk about off-site integrated construction precast hubs, things like that. But there's also many other areas, and that's something that we are still pushing for. But there are many other areas that we can actually, be much better, whether it's in deployment of automation or really just in terms of streamlining our operations. So we were quite happy to bring Minister Desmond to grace the topping out event of UOL's Project Avenue South, and then really, with the great work from Alan and team from United Tech, it's a topping out process for the topping out ceremony for the world's tallest PVC building, right? I think it's at 52 or 57. Alan, you're out there. 52 stories, right? And it's not just the tallest PVC building. It has also started to deploy some of the low carbon concrete in that project, and the relationship between UOL and United Tech is also highly exemplary of that of a collaborative relationship. And for me, the one that really kind of gave me a lot of hope was the deployment of a robotic installer for the lift shafts. Okay. It's the second deployment in Asia, first in Singapore. And I think it's one of those examples whereby, you would think that from the lift installers, they say that, yeah, all these robotic lift installers is very good for high rise. Then for a split second, yeah, that's what Singapore is about. We have lots of high rise. So it's not like the silver bullet, but I'm trying to say is that there are lots of such opportunities that we need to look out for, and we want to understand what are the adoption hurdles for the market, for the industry, for us to do more of such things. The other one that's coming up, so I'm kind of, we're struggling to see how much we can share because we don't want to take all the wind out of the launch of the ITM 2025 in September during the IBEW. So I'll give you some sneak preview. But, we are also kind of looking forward to the launch of the first integrated construction park hosted by Jurong Port. Not sure if our colleagues from Jurong Port is here. And it's going to be an exciting one because not only are we able to aggregate most of the common so-called storage facilities for the rebars and the cement in one location, we are also able to co-locate some of the fit-out yards there. So there'll be minimal kind of movements across the whole country. And with Jurong Port as kind of the main host, we were talking about Jurong Port and hope to be able to implement is the whole idea that they can actually plan out and time the movements of all the cement trucks around Singapore. Okay, because hopefully we can, with that, streamline the operations, and we don't have too many cement trucks going around the construction site waiting for their turn to discharge their cement. Okay, so all these are streamlining work that we can really work on. And then the third one is actually, I think probably in 1-2 months' time, we are going to launch or officially open the net zero building retrofitted by DBS in one of the Tanglin Newton site. Okay, so there are many interesting and encouraging innovation happening in the industry. And one of the things that we are also very want to do better and more of is how can we support companies, from the developers to the contractors to the architects, to look at how we can support your own innovation effort and also cross-connect, bring the innovators together, help point them to the key challenges that the industry is facing. So many of you know that we have a BE Accelerate to Market program, BE-AMP. On an annual basis, we throw out statements out there and kind of get innovators to help solve some of these problems, right? And then we give them some seed funding for some of the ideas. I think it's a very useful tool, but we think we can do better in terms of really focus many of those energy and ideas to the bigger, more serious challenges that the industry face. And also, over time, to see whether we are imagining, right, whether, or we are trying to see whether we can position a certain sites like BC Academy, or even working with some of the partners out there. For example, there's the architect firm in Singapore that's actually doing some of this innovation work, and all of us know that Capital Land also have a Capital Land Innovation Hub. So how together as a community, we can be much tighter in organizing the innovators, the problem statements, and also the very important VC funding to really help energize the innovators with more resources to help solve all the burning issues that we have. The bottom part on resilience is something that we've been working on for a long time, but I think we wanted to take the chance, and especially harnessing this period of crisis that we went through, to really stress it a little bit further. Many of you know that we have put in place a reasonably decent resilient plan on aggregates, okay? Whether it's on concrete or granite fines or sand, we have put in place a reasonable resilient plan. But I feel that even though we have the actual operation plan in place and we've actually been doing it, monitoring it, quarter on quarter, month on month, but I don't feel that the industry has fully onboarded it, because what we realized during the recent crisis in the last 6 to 9 months is that it is an insurance plan that nobody wants to pay for. Okay, and I think it's something that we need to ask ourselves. I think we do need to really ask ourselves, how can we be more sustainable? Okay, the sand and granite fines, or granite aside, just talk about precast for many of our building projects. I wouldn't be too far off to say that for many of our work, every project is tied to either 1 or 2 precast sites. And if anything happened to that site, actually, a lot of disruptions can take place. So one of the things that we're trying to do better is, for example, we're trying to drive a higher level of standardization in the industry. I know it sounds very conceptual, but it's a journey that I think we do have to take. Not for all parts, but there are some standard parts. We all know about PBUs, we all know about staircase, but are there more? Within one particular season of 5 years, where most of us will probably be only exposed to the whole experience of buying one property, is it necessary for some groupings of us to all have different doors, different sizes for every single room, right? So the question is whether there are components that can be more standardized. So we won't be attempting to do that at the industry level, but we will be attempting to do that with key developers and also with some of the GPEs to see whether we can engender the whole notion of standardization a bit more. And for the standard components, to be able to fabricate it in more than 2 different plants in 2 different regions, so that if there's any disruption, you can swing it around without us getting hurt, like how we are getting hurt, how we have gotten hurt in the last 1 year or so. So this whole notion of resilience is something that I think we have lots of lessons that we have observed, and hopefully we are learning from it. And we do want to work with the industry to see how we can address them in the coming years. So earlier on in the budget debate, we have actually launched a few initiatives already. I think the headlines there was, I think we put in place 184 million worth of new schemes to support the transformation of the industry. And this ranged from green mark incentives for existing buildings to help retrofit the existing buildings to be more sustainable, a new grant to encourage facility managers to really look into integrated and aggregated. So integrating over different FM services and aggregating over a few different buildings so that we can actually transform the whole FM space. And also a City of Tomorrow program where we can actually fund R&D efforts into looking at some of the longer-term problems. And in the rest of the year, we will actually be consulting many of our tripartite partners to fine-tune those plans a bit more before we launch our ITM plan in IBEW this year. Okay, so that's the first part on industry transformation. The second part on regulatory framework, like I mentioned, is in the context of us being a highly urbanized city, aging infrastructure, many of you have seen some incidents of falling facades. Those are some of the areas that we can do better and do more of. So on the first part on CoreNet X, we will see CoreNet X again later on. But we'll be launching CoreNet X, the new system, by 2023. And part of the key features in there is that between the agencies, we will put in place one collaborative platform so that all the agencies will be looking at one source of truth, one set of building plans, so that hopefully, in terms of the work that the industry is working with us is more coherent, it's not multiple separate conversations. And we will also be putting in place this module called the Automated Model Checker, whereby actually will help check some of the standard kind of rules and regulations that we require of in the plans. I was talking about facade, so we have actually put in place new guidelines for periodic facade inspection and periodic structural inspections. And these are the areas that we will actually be building on to make sure that the community has some of these services and the building owners are clear about their responsibility in making sure that the facade safety is something that they are responsible for and they have to do it regularly as part of the maintenance. We have also been working with the industry to actually put in place a remote monitoring and diagnostic so-called practice or approach to lifts and escalators. This is key, right? Because generally attracting young locals in the industry generally is a challenge across the industry, and also for the whole lift and escalator segment. We do right now have a limited pool, but so part and parcel of this whole effort is to introduce more technology innovation into the whole monitoring, inspection, and diagnostic space, so that the jobs can be redesigned, and it can also be more productive. We don't have to have that many people running up and down checking the list when it's not time to check them yet. Okay, and finally, raising professionalism. We're just highlighting an example there in terms of the managing agents, but actually across the whole industry, talking to Kim Yong just now, Mr. Yong just now, the whole need for us to raise professionalism to be able to be more effective in attracting young Singaporeans to join us. The other part about CoreNet X is this whole notion that we want to be able to streamline the work. I'm still not extremely familiar, but today the process, there are multiple so-called, not only are there multiple iterations between the industry and us, all the regulatory agencies, for various pro-business reasons, some of the process are turning up the wrong time, and that inevitably, cause us together to trip over some when we need to remedy some situations, it causes us a trip. So as part of the whole CoreNet X process, we will be putting a lot more emphasis on the planning stage, okay? So that we can get the planning and the regulatory compliance sorted out more upfront, so that we will experience hopefully as an industry, we will experience less so-called trips. You won't find that you will have to knock down pass just to comply with some regulations. And on our end, we are also moving into this whole smart approval and inspection system. The world is moving into a more database, more data-enabled, more technology-enabled era. And we too, we want to make better use of the data that we have, as well as, we have also recently, on the BCA end, we have consolidated all the inspection work into one team, so that actually we can, work with you guys on a more coherent fashion. Okay, you won't find 7 different teams coming to you. It's just one team coordinating with you and making things more efficient as well. So the idea is that we want to be able to deploy technology into the work that we have, and maybe even minimize the number of visits that we make to your sites. The last one on kind of meeting Singapore's aspirations. Here you see consumers, just now you saw homeowners, but essentially customers. Customers maybe in the form of developers, customers in terms of tenants, customers in terms of homeowners, customers in terms of Singaporeans, right? I think society is having more and more demands on us. whether is it sustainability, net zero, higher quality. So today, for us to be able to articulate that better, I mean, we have been working with many of these industry associations to put in place an accreditation program to be able to at least highlight the key quality or training or skill sets that industry will need to meet the minimum threshold. And thereafter, we want to be able to benchmark. And the whole idea of benchmarking is to be able to kind of articulate more clearly to the market the different kinds of services at the relevant price points, okay, that the industry is bringing to the market. Okay, so hopefully with clearer information, the relevant corners in the industry, in the market, will know where to and who to buy from in terms of the services and the products. And we also want to be able to activate the market. Okay, like I mentioned just now, I mean, the market ought to pay a premium for net zero properties. Okay, the market ought to pay a premium for high quality products. And to some extent, the market ought to pay a premium for products that are built responsibly. Okay, so some parts are more aspirational, but some parts ought to be activated. So it's a space that we will give it a good try in the next few years, and hopefully that will then help us, put in place an incentive system in the market that will reward the players that are investing time in this. Okay, so this is the last slide. We'll be working much more closely with the ground. I hope many of you have experienced that from us in recent times. And we will be pacing out our transformation efforts. We'll make sure that it's at a pace that we can bear, but yet stretch ourselves, challenge ourselves. And we'll be partnering with the industry to tweak the relevant parts as we go along to make sure that, when we meet on a regular basis, we can all encourage each other and know that we're heading in the right direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you, CEO. Please be seated. As you can see. Thank you, CEO. I think he covered a little bit on the ITM 2025, which will likely be launched on the IBEW, our International Built Environment Week. I think at the end of this, I will also share a little bit more about the International Built Environment Week, so please save the date. I also had a little bird just now that came to me, but a little bird that came to me and told me that some of you are taking pictures. But for your information, if you don't know, your lanyard, at the back of it, there is a QR code. You can scan the QR code, and later on, you'll be able to access the slides that CEO was sharing. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have also come to our first panel discussion for the summit. And the theme for this panel discussion is Emerging Stronger Through Growth and Transformation. So hopefully this discussion will draw out expert advice on how our BE sector can build and sustain an ecosystem to grow and transform. So this session will be moderated by Professor Arnold D. Meyer. Professor Arnold, please come on stage. Thank you. And joining him, as well as my CEO on stage, are eminent senior leaders from the built environment. And may I invite on stage architect Angeline Chan, chairman at DP Architects, Mr. Kim Yong, chairman at Wahab Private Limited, Mr. Justin Gavani, chief executive officer, Asia, Lendlease, and last, Mr. Yo Kong Ni, Managing Director at NG Services Singapore. So ladies and gentlemen, on-site as well as all of you online, don't forget that our pigeonhole is already open. In case if you haven't accessed the pigeonhole, the QR code should be located at the bottom right corner of your screen, all right? So you can scan the QR code and post your questions, and remember, you can also upload the questions as well. Yes, I think the mic is working well. So Professor Arnold, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you here in this room and all the people online. I understand that there are more than 800 people online also joining us here for this discussion. The theme of this panel is emerging stronger through growth and transformation. So there is really something about we want to grow, but I heard the word resilience several times, both in your speech, Calvin, but also I heard it from the minister. So I think I will try to focus a little bit of discussion in the beginning here on how do we transform the sector and how do we make the sector, the built environment sector, more resilient. We have actually players from the whole ecosystem, from the regulator to the architects, the construction, the developers, and the consultants and the support services that we have. So we really have the ecosystem here, the whole value chain on the panel. And so I'm going to start with a very simple question to all of you. To increase resilience and innovation in the sector, what do you think that is the transformation from your perspective that needs to be done? And I would add the question, and how are you going to collaborate on it? Because that word of collaboration, that idea of working together, building trust, as the minister said, it seems to be very important. Kelvin, you already had your speech, so I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to start with the architects. Angeline, what do you think about it? What needs to be done?
Thanks, Prof. Anu, and good morning, everyone. So over the past 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic and the disruption to our workforce, we know has threatened our BE sector's ability to function. We are always the first to be hit and last to recover because our ecosystem is so intertwined with global movements of labor and goods. So to your question, Prof. Anu, I think I'll propose to look at agility and resilience in the format of time and scale. So in the short term, businesses must embrace digitalization immediately and meaningfully. So since the end 2019, many of us have had to face the challenge of balancing flexibility and productivity whilst building our own agile and resilient infrastructure within our businesses. And to maintain productivity in today's complex BE ecosystem, when hundreds of our people suddenly had to work from home during the COVID lockdown, the on-premises organizations like our architectural and engineering businesses had to quickly scale up our remote working way of working. We were all in uncharted territories. Because no one can fully prepare for what the future demands, we had to adapt to whatever comes next. So whether it's another pandemic or an ever-evolving regulatory environment, an agile and resilient ecosystem requires investments in technologies, such as digital tools, security, and workplace connectivity, to ensure that our employees will have secure access to work resources from any location and from any device. So in the long run, however, industry leaders need to put aside our own organizational interests to address collective interests. Contracting professional consultancy fees, price diving in tender, and siloed agencies are systemic issues that affects everyone in our ecosystem. These underlying issues require more open dialogue between all parties to make the BE sector more sustainable and buoyant in times of crisis. So to address agility and resiliency within DP, let me just say that we have in recent years embarked on a global research thrust, which we refer to as the Green Well Tech, or GWT for short. For green, we're seeking to deepen our sustainable agenda by pushing all our projects through a matrix that builds upon the UN's 17 SDGs, BCA's Green Mark 2021, and the SG Green Plan 2030. On well, our teams are integrating health and well-being principles into our design to facilitate mental, physical, and social well-being of their occupants. And for tech, one of our latest explorations is the co-founding of a new business called Spacework. It transforms the way that digital twins are assembled for cities and buildings. Spacework is a first-of-its-kind prop-tech B2B marketplace that defines solution sourcing and lifecycle management. So with these new tools, we hope to be well-positioned for whatever the future throws at us.
Thank you. Let me move to Kim Yong. What do you think needs to happen in the sector?
For us, for our business, we feel that the key is just people and teamwork. With the right people and right team, then I think we have the ability to deal with all the different issues at stake. However, to attract the right talent and retain them in the industry, which is not very popular, first of all, we need the critical mass to have sufficient work to be fair to all our employees. I think the company requires to have the right vision, core values, and purpose. If we have motivated team members, then we see whatever crisis we meet, we'll be able to address it and can, well, I tell the team, our purpose very simply put, do well and do good. Do good meaning to society and everyone in the business. I just recently read a book called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. He mentioned 4 key elements for scaling up. And I think crises come and go. But as a business, we strongly believe that if you stagnate, there's less opportunity for you to attract the right talent and retain them. We have to have growth. So I was glad when I read this book, it says 4 key words. First one, people. Strategy, execution, and very famous last one, cash. So, of course, we've been fortunate that we have the right people, right team. I think we managed the crisis fairly well. We believe that when opportunity arises, we must seize it and execute it well. Finally, of course, over the years, we've been lucky with the support of all board members and team members. We have now the financial strength to ride over almost any crisis. And I agree with Angeline, we also must have the agility and we must be wise enough to change to meet the circumstances. For me personally, the crux is my people and my team. And we will ride out any problem or crisis that hits us. We will find a way to get around it as a team. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me move to Justin. From your perspective, land lease, what you see needs to happen in the sector here, in the built environment sector here in Singapore, to become more resilient?
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I mean, firstly, I'd like to highlight, and Kelvin had this in his presentation. You know, the government here, the agencies here, do a great job of forward-looking and really pushing the ecosystem, you know, ahead to that transformational change. As a business, you know, we operate across many gateway cities around the world, and we've operated in Singapore for nearly 50 years, and we consider Singapore probably one of our leading cities in terms of that forward-looking and transformative approach, you know, partnering with industry and the government. When we look at transformation, and we're a builder, we're a developer, we're an asset manager, an owner. I think the important thing is why are we looking to transform? And Kelvin touched on this at the end of his presentation. It's really the customer. We see the customer is demanding that transformation in terms of our tenants, in terms of our investors, from a quality perspective, from a safety perspective, and most importantly, from a sustainability perspective. We're seeing in other of our markets that tenants won't go to buildings unless they are a certain level of sustainability rating. Investors won't invest in buildings unless they are a certain level of sustainability ratings. They won't work with industry partners unless they're working to a certain safety standard and requirements. So if we don't change, the disruption will be upon us, whether we like it or not. So that's the why. In terms of how, you know, we embarked on our journey as a group, I think 3 or 4 years ago, you know, a lot of people in our construction business said, you know, aren't you looking to disrupt what we're doing by digitalizing and investing heavily in digital of construction? And when you look at the construction industry compared to other industries for the built environment, it's way behind automotive, shipping, in terms of how those built environment products are created. It's been heavily too reliant on labour and not enough automation. So we invested heavily in a digital platform, called Podium. I'm proud to say we established one of our area product development centres here in Singapore in partnership with the EDB, and that was very much around not just investing it for ourselves, but for the industry and for the ecosystem. And how do we provide products that the industry can benefit from in terms of digitalising construction? Angeline touched it in terms of from a design perspective, but the other important part of that ecosystem is the supply chain. We need the supply chain to lift up and be part of that design process, and that'll deliver a better product through that standardisation, through that automation, and Kelvin touched on a lot of these things in his presentation. I think the other thing is how do we get there through regulation, and this is particularly important, I think, from a sustainability perspective, and that's where agility is required, is continuing to lift the bar. So as a business, in the assets we've developed here in Singapore, we've looked at the top level of the sustainability credentials here in Singapore, and all of our developments, we've tried to raise the bar and go one step above that, not just for our own developments, but to bring the industry up with us. And I think that's an important factor, and I think working with governments to regulate that assets need to be of a certain standard, not just incentivize developers and builders to do it, but to regulate, I think, is a very important part of that. And then finally, which has also been touched on, is talent and people. I think to transform this, the industry and business, we can't only rely on the talent and people that have come from within the industry over the years. We need to look outside of that industry, and particularly in the tech and digital space. And touching back on our product development centre, we've hired some 50 coders and software engineers that don't have any built environment experience to be part of that ecosystem, and that's something that's a big change in terms of bringing that talent forward, but also reinvesting in the talent we have to understand the use of data and how data can inform better design of our buildings, better operation in our buildings, and better maintenance of our buildings.
Thank you. Kong Ni, from your perspective.
Thanks, Prof. And good morning, everybody. I think I'll address this question from the viewpoint of operator and maintenance of the building, which obviously takes up a big part of the life cycle cost of a building. So I see two key areas, and it's been touched on by both the panelists and the minister as well. First is talent acquisition. How do we attract the right talent, or enough talent into our industry? I think it's widely said that the industry is not exactly the most attractive in terms of wage and competitiveness and so on. But I think some of the factors that limit talent acquisition are self-inflicted. So when I look at my contracts, say facility management contract, which specify very clearly a facility manager must have X number of years of experience, certain degree, or so on and so forth, it kind of limits who we can attract into the industry. And I often ask myself, where do the fresh graduates go then? Because I can't deploy them on site. So I think we need to have a change of mindset in that area, whereby we must be able to embrace new guys coming in, give them the opportunity to build up the career within the build industry, and that can be done through some tweaks in the way we contract out. I think the other part about it is a work condition. I mean, work condition, in some of our sector, we are still locked in the 5.5-day work week, which is really not attractive to young graduates. And again, within the built environment ecosystem, I think we can change that and make it more attractive. I think the second point is technology, and we acknowledge that technology needs to be speed up in the built environment, and especially in the operation and maintenance of a building. But technology is not done without a significant cost investment, and what we realize is that when we try and implement a technology within, say, a contractual duration, which can range from only 3 to 5 years, it's really not enough time for us to recoup the investment cost. I think the industry is trying to move to a bit longer duration, even 3 plus 3 plus 3 years. But as far as the investor is concerned, my CFO will tell me that there's only 3 years because the next 3 is not certain. And therefore, this will result in a higher cost of technology investment and also making it more difficult to implement. So I guess what I'm trying to push for is that to really build resilience, to attract the right people in, to embrace new technology, we really need to transform the industry into a completely outcome-based. I think the industry is pushing for that already. But outcome-based really means having no restriction on who you deploy, what you do. The whole idea is to just get the outcome out there and also really to lengthen the scope and the duration of contracts. I mean, I cite my colleagues in Europe where they tell me that they do a 10 plus 5, 15 years contract where the first 3 years are just investment and you recoup your investment costs later on. I think with that kind of a mindset shift, we can build the resilience within the industry.
Yeah. Actually, when I listen to this, and I know that I'm now going to radically simplify the richness of what you said, but I sort of wrote down 5 words. That is agility. That seems to be common to the 4 and your presentation also. Digitalization. People was very important. Actually, you mentioned something about working conditions, but also working relationships within the sector. That is my 4th point. And the 5th one is the customer. Now, if I'm sitting here as a customer, I say, nice intentions that you all have. How much is this going to cost me? How do you overcome the dilemma that you already indicated, Kelvin? The dilemma that, yes, you want to educate or you want to make sure that your customer is going to pay a little bit more for all these investments that you're going to make in people, technology, etc., longer contracts that you were referring to. Any comments on that? How do you see that dilemma between the cost pressures and the inflation that we see coming around us everywhere, and the intentions that you have to invest more in the sector? Anybody who wants to react to that?
Can I just make a quick comment? I know I'm the last one to say because I'm the Zhenghu public service, right? No, but I feel that just hearing what Connie mentioned about the 3 to 5 year kind of contract that you are subjected under, and also this particular question about workforce, right? No, I think it is about the promise that we are making to our customer. It is about that relationship that we want to forge with our customer. I think I hope to be able to work with the industry and forge more of is to say that actually in 10 years' time, this is where we want to get to together. And you have to look at the customer and say that, is this where you want to head to? And therefore, can we have a longer term relationship? In the absence of that, yeah, right? So for example, if anybody will come to us and ask BCA to help with a bit more foreign workers, in the absence of a commitment to do better at the end of, I'm just saying this out every day now, in 5 to 10 years' time, why would I do it? Right? So I think it's the same. I mean, and then that's part of the whole alliance approach that we're trying to champion. We want to be able to bring the parties together to say that actually we do want to get better at what we are doing, even all the way down to the customer, the developer, right? We do want to get better in terms of what we are doing at the end of 5 years, at the end of 10 years. It's a long journey, nothing becomes overnight. So if we are able to get to that kind of agreement, then I think we have at least the basic platform to talk about the longevity, the trust, and then the resource allocation to invest. I mean, that's a quick generic view on this.
I think it's to quote what Minister Tan was saying earlier in his speech, that innovating may be tough, but not innovating would be worse. I was speaking to some of you in the room, and everyone really is complaining that the last 2 years has been tough, and it's not getting easier this year either. And everyone is in this room, nicely enough, is facing that same situation. But we don't have a choice, right? We do need to move forward. And I really believe that if we don't do anything about it, it will be worse in the next 5 to 10 years. So maybe in baby steps, move a little bit, but definitely you have to move forward and innovate to stay resilient and agile.
Justin, you were indicating that you were trying to take leadership and work with others. do you see this, that it's in baby steps, it's in a 10-year long program?
I think, look, for us, you need to show leadership, right? And you need to be at the forefront to bring people on the journey. And if I take sustainability, we've been on a sustainability journey for at least 15 years. And it's been interesting to see the transition over the 15 years in terms of it becoming, oh, how much extra is that going to cost, to now it being, they want a minimum standard, otherwise it's a discount. And I think Kelvin touched on premium. I think it's quickly moving to that if you're not meeting certain standards, people want a discount or don't want to be in your building. I think, with increase in energy costs, carbon tax, we're seeing that payback of the investment in sustainable buildings become far quicker. And therefore, what was before, it will pay back over 20 years, is becoming now a much shorter period. So you're hearing there's a payback on investment from just saving of operating costs and energy costs and future taxes that are already coming and are going to come, plus customers demanding for their own people and their own tenants and their own shareholders that they're in and ESG strategies, that they're in a built environment that meets a certain. So it's coming from both angles. I think that's the biggest shift we've seen as an organisation, particularly in the last 2 years. If I also talk about it from an investment point of view, and I think we're all familiar with ESG investing. We've never seen so much ESG capital flowing across all sectors with an ESG mandate. I think in the last 2 years, we've done, to fund our projects, our business, a number of green and sustainability linked bonds. You go back 5 years ago, that was a sort of a marketing ploy. Now you get a better rate on your money because there are investors that can only invest in sustainability or green bonds. And so I think those, as I said, doesn't matter which part of the built environment it comes from, it's coming from both angles, and that's what's going to now drive that trust transformation. So reinvest, to summarise, pay back on your investment, but also that customer demand is going to turn into discounts if we don't address it.
You want to react to that?
I wanted to add on to your point about technology costs and all that. I think it's really about a matter of aligning the expectation of both the provider and the customer. We have a long-term viewpoint where if we look 10 years ahead, we can see what kind of cost factor is going to increase in terms of manpower, and a short-term investment in technology is able to elevate that problem down the road. And I think to add on to Justin's point, there are investors, there are providers like ourselves who are more than willing to put up the capital investment required and to reap the return over time, and therefore allow the developers or the building owners to take the capex off the books. So I think this will be the kind of business model that we hope the industry will embrace, which will have a long-term positive impact.
Yeah. Let me just...
For us, we all live in commercial world. The client, we understand client also have a threshold, how much you can afford to pay. So for us to invest in the long term, it's a long-term relationship. We are fortunate that we have many leading developers in Singapore who are long-term clients. So for us, we always try to look at both sides of coins. Yep. Some will win, some will lose, but as long as it's to the interest of the project, we will implement it, even if it's not cost-effective for the short term.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So,
let me just sort of throw in a quick question. Many of you, Minister of State, you, all of you refer to the crisis of the last 2 years. Was there any positive element to COVID-19? Have we learned something? Was there a silver lining for the built environment industry? What are the lessons we have and that we can apply in the future? Because as you said, Angeline, the next crisis is just around the corner, right? It's going to come there. Were there some silver linings to COVID-19? Mr. Kim, I see you smiling.
I think the only thing we find that is quite effective is this Zoom. I mean, it does help us, keep us ticking a bit quite effectively. We survived without traveling and still can continue to do business overseas. So not the same, but it did help a lot. At least you can feel something with the Zoom.
Yeah. We learned how to do business differently. Angeline?
I think this is where we all wish that we had bought Zoom shares before the pandemic.
They have gone down recently.
With every crisis, recession, slowdown, I think it's good for all of us, and especially for us in DP, to always take a step back, assess our situation, and then improve on it. And because in a day-to-day world when work is very, very busy, where we're all running at top speed, we don't step back and assess our situation and then ask ourselves, are we doing better and can we improve? And I think that's why in the last 2 years we have really embarked seriously on the subject matter that are really important to us, consolidated our companies, look at the people that needs to be upskilled and really put them through training. And I think it's times like this that is useful to be put through more purposefully to look and assess ourselves. Yeah. So from that point of view, yes, I mean, there are good things that has come out of COVID. Yeah.
Justin?
For me, two words, and we've touched on them earlier in the conversation. So one agility and the other one resilience. I think for what COVID demonstrated to me, and we saw this through the business, was how quickly we could adapt and change, and how agile we could be when we needed to be. And to the point earlier on Zoom, suddenly we went from, when was the last time someone dialed into a teleconference with a dial-in number? Now everything's a standard video call. But for the last 10 years, we've had video conferences, but they weren't used the way they're used today. And in a very, very short period of time, we transformed how we communicated through sort of remote working and agile working across countries. I think that's provided a huge boost into the built environment's view on flexible working. We very much still see a place for the office, a place where people need to come together, but we probably see that evolving for what was pre-COVID. It's going to be very much about collaboration, very much about culture, not just about communicating, and people are going to be looking for hybrids ways of working. But I think that, for me, that acceleration in a 2-year period of something that we've had the technology to do for 10, 15 years, but never got there, is proof that you can change very quickly and in a resilient way as well.
So we should remember that we can be actually very agile and not forget about it. Kong Ni?
Yeah, I think in our super manpower intensive industry, we see that in the last 2 years, even when the manpower get reduced in numbers, buildings continue to operate, buildings continue to be maintained, and work goes on. So I guess we should not forget this. Let's not go back to the days whereby we need more people on site. Maybe a lot of work can be done, or some work need not be done, so expectation can change in order to be agile. And goes back to my earlier point where we focus on the outcome more than the number of people we deploy. I think that lesson should be remembered. I think we can do a lot more with a lot less people, and hopefully they will stay beyond the COVID.
When we do the transformation and the growth of the sector partially is to become internationally more competitive, right? Justin, if I start with you, how would you rate our international competitiveness of the Singapore built environment sector, and what needs to be done to become even more competitive or more competitive?
Yeah, great question. I think I think I touched on this in the sort of opening. We really rank Singapore across all the cities we operate. Australia, Europe, the United States, very close to the top, if not the top. And a lot of that's driven by the government and government agencies' foresight into where it wants to take the built environment. The speed of planning, the speed of going from when you think about a project to when you finish a project. An example, one of our flagship projects in Australia is Barangaroo, and we were bidding that project at the same time as a government project. At the same time, Marina Bay Sands was being bid for here. Marina Bay Sands was tendered, completed, and operating before we even started construction on Barangaroo, and that just gives you how well the government. So I think that's a really important part for asset creators like ourselves. I think the other thing is around feedback and working with industry. We're a big believer in terms of everything we do around the world in creating place. And at the end of the day, back to this customer point, people want to go to built environments that create place, that have a reason to be there. And I think one thing the URA has done very well is taking that feedback, looking at best practice around the world in terms of other global cities. How do you create place for Singapore that's going to make it more internationally competitive and promote industry? And I think that's a really important thing, because if you don't do that, you don't promote that international competitiveness by looking at other practices and what else has been done, then you just risk falling behind. And then finally, is being pro business, pro foreign investment. I mean, the amount of capital that has come and hubbed itself in Singapore in the last 10, 15 years as it's become a wealth management hub is also key. At the end of the day, money is what fuels all these buildings and everything we create in the built environment. So, having an abundance of liquidity and capital in the place is very, very important.
Kim Yong, same question to you.
I don't know, is your question for us to export our industry or
to make it more internationally competitive and yes, build up an export industry? Yeah.
My personal experience.
What I hear from Justin is we are locally very competitive.
What I'm talking about, I will be looking at as a contractor to export our business is I have quite a few countries experience.
Yep.
And everyone is slightly different. I think first of all, if the Singapore companies and the local authorities would help local contractors, I don't mean us, anyone, to have the opportunity to do projects of certain size, of different complexity, data centers or anything like. Because for us to export, all right, you need to attract record, otherwise nobody can employ you, right? My personal experience, different countries, I worked in Myanmar a number of years successfully. We succeeded doing that with Singapore management, meaning the key guys were from Singapore who could implement that. I think I see that is because Myanmar, I'm talking, we're there for 20 over years, was from a very low base. Thailand was even earlier. That time I was just greenhorn, just employed foreigners. But in India, specifically India, we sent a Singaporean there, a good guy, don't get me wrong. He came back after 2 years, then can't break the market. He came in and done very well for somebody else. Then we were fortunate, and the Indian staff here is sent back to India. He took the lead and has grown the business the last 10, 11 years. I mean, fairly substantial. Bearing in mind, in India, construction cost is 1/4 of Singapore. Our order book now is about 900 million Sing, consistently turnover except for the COVID time, $200 million Sing per annum, which is equivalent to doing $800 million in Singapore, 900 million. But in India, you need an Indian national to know the culture and so forth to really get it going. We started Indonesia operation because from an India experience, again, we sent back Indonesian national that work for us here and sent back. So each country has its different issues and so forth. You have to, the key is still, as I said earlier, everything falls down to people and teamwork. We may have the financial resources to back it. First, we need the track record. I think companies and authorities can help to give the opportunity to local to have the experience to export it. And the rest is up to the company's commitment, willingness to try. By going overseas doesn't mean you can make more money. Don't get me wrong. But if you want to be a serious player in the construction industry, you need a critical mass. And you need that bit of zest to try. Our biggest client in India, I think I'm doing my 12th project. I'm glad to say it's a Singapore company, Ascenders. I'm doing with them 12 projects now. So that's something we're very proud. I think we'll be doing the 3rd project with Maple Tree. So it helps being a Singaporean, definitely.
Yeah. Angeline, any comments on growth beyond Singapore?
And I think whether, how can Singapore have the competitive edge? I think we need to identify the BE sector as a complete sector. For us to enact the industry transformation map, for us to strengthen our strategic network, and for us to develop the right capabilities of our industry so that we can hunt as a pack. And I have 3 points to share here with regards to our competitiveness. One is that, we should really, all of us, look at increasing our presence in ASEAN. As you know, ASEAN is predicted to become the 4th largest economy in the world after US, China, and the EU. So it will be, ASEAN will be home to the fastest growing economies with a growing educated and young workforce, an emerging middle class with 60% of its population under 35 years old. So how should we enhance our international competition then? And honestly speaking, I think research is one way that Singaporean companies can differentiate ourselves at a global level. Some of us may quibble that innovation hardly takes seat in Singapore, either because most initiatives are top-down, or that our people lack the courage and the curiosity to test new boundaries, or that we are too small to even make a significant change in the world. But I think it is precisely because of our size that Singapore serves as the ideal test bed for urban design solutions to be applicable globally. And my second point is that moving forward, I do think that private practices would benefit from partnering with tertiary institutions to facilitate a professional learning environment. NUS and SUTD have been pushing out a lot of academic studies and prototypes which industry players can value add. Last year, we all know that NUS launched its Center for 5G Digital Building Technology, which aims to transform the way that people design, deliver, and manage our built environment. So I think we really need to leverage on each other's expertise to grow collectively. And my third point is this: another aspect for the public and private sector to share is to share information and data resources. I think it cannot be emphasized enough that the information and data which any private practice has is fundamentally limited in depth and in scope. Certainly, there's much synergy between public institutions and private practices, but we don't seem to leverage on it enough. We should share data, we should share information, and share research. There is still a strong silo mentality, and I think we need to break it. So as a practicing architect, one last point, I cannot deny that research in design can be a hefty investment. And given that Singapore Inc. has always been a public-private partnership of sorts, it only makes economic and strategic sense for a closer working relationship together to transform our BE sector if we want to be competitive globally.
Before I let Kelvin respond to this, Kong Ni, quickly, from your perspective, being a representative from a very international company.
Sure, I think NG site our HQ for Asia Pacific over here precisely because we see that Singapore is leading the way in terms of sustainability. And I think, if you look at the 2030 Green Plan and the subsequent Green Mark 2021, it is definitely pushing the way, pushing the envelope for buildings to be green. And, if we design well, build well, maintain well, and operate well, I think that could be our big competitive advantage. But I mean, we are constrained by lack of renewable, and if we can turn that constraint and continue to operate the building in a very sustainable manner, I think that would be an area to go. I think for that to happen, we will probably need to change some of our business model. Again, the embracing private-public partnership in terms of investment, in terms of co-sharing of risk, and that kind of model will be replicated to the other parts of Asia. I mean, in Singapore, we are not exactly the most expensive in terms of energy costs. I think the regional countries are having even heavier energy costs, and if we can have a business model that allow developers and owners to save on that, I think that could be easily exported to the rest of the world.
Kelvin, before I go to the questions in the pigeonhole, there were several comments about we need to work together more, we need to share data, was your point. Minister said we need to build trust within the sector. What's the role of BCA in this?
Well, thank you. No, actually, many of you do know that actually BCA today is not just a regulator, we are an industry developer as well.
Yeah.
So actually, as part of that, I mean, we are doing more in terms of connecting the dots and bring willing parties together in the industry, as well as with the government. I mean, the reality is that actually, as a government, we have set aside quite substantial resources to support most of the industries in Singapore with R&D resources, both in terms of the technical resources as well as funding. So actually, they are all there, and we really need to kind of, we are quite ready to connect with the different industry players to support you in pursuing some of these efforts. And so, yes, so I mean, I think one of the roles that I think BCA really plays is really to try to organize the industry a bit better and to support the efforts of the leaders so that we can together show the way in terms of how this industry should be and the growth that we can really champion. On the point about export and competitiveness, I mean, many of our panelists here today are regional and global.
Yeah.
And actually, what was very interesting is that, at the peak of the crisis, when all work have stopped here, the international firms were able to redeploy the talents that we have here in Singapore to serve the projects overseas, right? And when we were at the midst of that worker supply crisis, the regional and international firms were the ones that have access overseas to bring in the workers. So actually, there is a resilient connection to this regional and international presence. And furthermore, I mean, I always say that Singapore is a small country. There's not enough in Singapore to actually make many of us that big and that happy and that successful. We have to, this whole part about really trying to tap the regional markets is actually a key part to that growth. So one of the things that we're trying to do in terms of organizing is, we see a huge category in the industry of projects that we can use and leverage to really drive home hone this practice of productivity, automation, okay? But actually, productivity and automation, you really cannot export. Because when you go into many of the markets in the region, they're not where the labor may be much cheaper, they may not pay a premium for productivity and automation. So that one is more, for our own purpose and needs. But there is a category of projects, many of that from the government procurement entities, where it helps our industry build up track records, whether it's in terms of airports, tunnels, water systems, and things like that. And that is a category that we are also trying to organize ourselves. We have been having actually very interesting and exciting road mapping sessions with our government partners and also with some of you guys in the industry who have expressed interest and also that commitment to actually invest in those capabilities to take on those projects. And that is one of those conversations that we're organizing better to help our companies hone that track record to export.
We have a very interesting question in the pigeonhole about rebranding. And it's a very important one because several of you have pointed out the role of people. Mr. Kim, you did so. But how do we change the existing stigma in AEC so that we can entice our younger generation to join the industry? Anybody who wants to react to that?
Yeah, I have a go at that. Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier on that sustainability is the key word today. And we all know that the built environment does contribute a significant portion of...
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Yeah, okay. But as I said, sustainability is a keyword today, and the built environment does contribute a fair bit to our carbon emission. And many of the work that we are doing today centers around how we can reduce carbon. And I think this will be a major selling point for the younger generation who wants to be part of this journey to join the built environment. I think we should brand the built environment as one that is contributing actively to carbon reduction of carbon emission. In addition to the build, own, and operate, sustainability will be a big part of the keyword that we should add into this environment.
How do we make this industry, the built environment sector, attractive to the young graduates from SIT, from NUS and SUTD that you were referring to? Kim Young?
We're taking quite a lot of undergraduate from SIT. I've met some of them last year, and I think I've been quite lucky. We recruited, convinced some of them joining us. This year we're having another get-together session again. I think sometime this week I'll also be meeting them. So what we're trying to do is to get them, while they're still at university, they're on the job training, so you have to expose them. I was telling Kelvin, but quite a few of them are foreigners, I think Myanmar and so forth. The Singaporeans do have some, but they're less keen. Because our working hours are so long, I think we've come to the decision now, although, well, I hope my son will be announcing it soon. Now we have to accept for my projects, staff team members will be alternate Saturday. There's too much unhappiness on that. I was telling BCA, I say, ideally, please legislate no work on Saturday. And then I tell you, a lot more young people will join our industry. For us as a builder, I'm serious. It's a long working hour. But developers won't be happy to hear that. They have to pay a lot more money, and the project will be a lot slower. So finally, I think the decision on no such thing. So we have to find a way to work as effectively as possible on Saturday, because young team members' work-life balance is very important. I'm the old,
Yes.
long nose. I do not believe
generation.
in so,
Maybe just chime in a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I think we do have a lot of very exciting and interesting good projects that we can do better in terms of showcasing. I mean, I highlighted the Avenue South project. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm the swaku around, but to see the robots in the lift was quite exciting for me. And I think there are many of such projects, I mean, exciting projects, whether it's a Jewel and things like that, we can profile better. And actually, I was also looking back at some of the exciting videos that John and Liang Guan was featured in the old days. I mean, there are many exciting footages and projects we've done that we can showcase better. But at the same time, I think as an industry, like what panelists have talked about, we really need to dream and push ourselves to go a bit further in terms of what we can achieve. Just 2-3 weeks ago, I participated in conversation with the EDB gang, and the conversations was about space. Now there are people in the space industry whereby they're looking at how we can slingshot a rocket up to space, because now Elon Musk have discovered how to do self-landing boosters, so it makes going up and down space a lot more affordable now, but still the rocket fuel is actually not very sustainable. So now they're looking at how we can send organic supplies, whether it's food, water, up into space through a mechanical slingshot, right? And some of the conversation in the space industry is about sending up robots to mine the asteroids in space, okay? So when I was just going in there to kind of jot my mind in terms of how I think about stuff. But the reality is that we have a part of the world talking about mining asteroids, and today we're struggling with us. So I do feel that if we put our minds to it, we can really change. Yeah.
There is an interesting question that perhaps one of you want to react to, and that is the current manpower shortage is a crucial driver for change. how to help companies change the mental model of automatically seeking additional manpower whenever there is a shortage and look to tech. How do we change that mindset to prefer technology over adding people? Anybody who wants to react to that question? Justin,
Sure.
let me challenge you.
I think there is a couple of ways, and I think the government's done a good job to drive this. So one of it is just making certain requirements for new buildings to be PVVC minimum standards, off-site manufacturing. That's already going to drive a reduce. So keeping that up and doing more of that, I think, is important, because that will force, particularly in this part of the world where there is a big arbitrage in terms of that foreign labour cost, compared to other markets where you don't have that. It will force doing that. I think the supply chain has to marry that. So it's one thing to mandate it, but the supply chain has to respond and be able to provide, as developers, builders, the supply to be able to meet those requirements, and they need to be, and the quality to meet their requirements. So I think those two parts play a part. And then finally, that goes with that is quality. I think people need to see that they're getting a better product for equal or a lower cost by going down that more productive route.
Angeline, any comments on that question? How do we make that mental, because you started actually off with digitalization.
Yeah.
How do we make that mental shift?
Yeah, I think in the architecture and engineering world as well, that shift is a given. I mean, we know that with more tech and more tools, more digitalization, we're able to do things faster and more efficiently, and with fewer people, hopefully. We are, when we first started with BIM, obviously it was a really tough hill to climb. A lot of people were struggling, but once you get a hang of it, you'll understand and appreciate, what it can do. And with submission, I think the industry is greatly looking forward to ConnectX coming on board and helping us with, overcome this submission process, which I think needs, to be way more efficient in this world of digitalization. Yeah.
Kelvin, any comments on that from the BCEA perspective?
No, not anymore than what I've said.
Great, yes. We have a few more.
Arno, to reply to that,
Sorry.
I think I concur entirely with Justin. He's absolutely right. I'm sorry to throw the buck, but BCA must take the lead and nobody will do PPVC unless they say it must be done, because it's so much more expensive. A lot more effort must be made to do that. So I think if the authority forces developers, because developers paying for it, consumers paying for it, to do things more off-site where it's possible, I think that's very important. But the other thing is, I noticed traveling around, we have the most difficult building to build here. It's the least buildable. I'm serious, in Singapore, buildings are not designed to be buildable. They are damn nice, all right? But they are not buildable. So unless developers, sorry to say, architects and all start thinking, hey, I don't have the labor, you got to start from the drawings. We can't do anything. We can do some value engineering to improve the productivity. Seriously, engineering, you go to Japan and you see the office building, all boxes, man. Where like here? I built Garden by the Bay, I built Jewel. Jesus, I tell you, not easy. Or reflection or deleted, you won't see it overseas.
Angeline, I think you need to react to that.
No.
I was just going to say, I'm so sorry, with more powerful tools like Revit and Rhino, I think you will have a tougher time constructing. I can understand why I think Kim Yong is finding so much difficulties, but we have the wonderful pleasure of using new materials, new software tools, creating more wonderful buildings, and we do want our buildings to, shout out for Singapore and say, and really make a mark in the world. So maybe in some ways,
it's okay. I'm just saying.
No, we have to collaborate. I think we have to collaborate way upfront, early engagement, contractors engagement, I think is a necessary exercise to do that so that you don't suffer too much, the contractors don't suffer too much from the coordination process. And I think we also, the architects and the engineers, benefit from the wisdom and the guidance of the contractors to also help us build more buildably.
Can I just maybe just interject?
10 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. That I think we should look at it as a portfolio.
Yeah.
We're not talking about standardizing everything. We are talking about standardizing the parts that we can standardize, and then play with the parts that we want to play with, and still make us distinctive. So I think that's the balance that we're trying to work in the industry.
We have very few minutes left. I want to ask you, each of you, a very simple question. Given the changes that we require, the transformation that we have to go through, is your leadership style having to change? We already talked about attracting talent, but is your leadership style, the way you provide leadership, as was mentioned in Minister's speech, is your leadership going to change? Very brief answer.
Yeah, I think the style would have to change according to the profile of people that you're managing today. I mean, just as recent as a few years ago, you wouldn't have a digital team in the built environment. Today, it's an integral part of it. So I think the way we manage, the way we welcome new talent is the way forward. And I think related to the transformation of the industry, we have to be the advocacies in this area with the different stakeholders, and very, very importantly, within our own team, the advocate change.
Thanks, Gong Li. Justin?
I think as leaders, we need to show clearly our willingness to change and adapt, and do that, at the forefront to demonstrate, to our people where we're trying to take the built environment. Unless we do that, we'll continue to be sort of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really a dinosaur, so I think my leadership style, quite honestly, I think the next generation of family leaders will be more appropriate to take the company to the next level. They'll be softer, understand work-life balance, more appreciative people. And dinosaurs don't, unfortunately. So that's my honest truth.
You can challenge them in the room. They have to become these new leaders. Angeline?
I think not so much a leadership change on my part, but a greater continuous focus on raising the capabilities of our colleagues, leading them to the right direction, motivating them, and so that they will continuously stay relevant and ahead of the curve.
Kelvin?
No, that's definitely echo the themes of adaptability and being relevant. I mean, especially in the last 2 years when we have to go through so many different crisis after crisis, I mean, the resilience and adaptability is extremely important.
Yeah. It's always difficult to summarize a rich discussion like we had, but as I said, I wrote down a few words for myself. One lesson that I've learned here is we know that we can be agile. We've done it during the COVID crisis. Let's not lose that capability of being a very agile group of companies. Secondly, digitalization is with us. We will need to attract people that understand the digitalization, that can work with the data. But what was also important in what Angeline said is that it's not only about digitalization, but it's about sharing data and getting out of our silos. The third word that I wrote down here is different relationships between the different players in the value chain. You talked about longer contracts, but there were a number of other points that were made about how do we work better and closer together with each other. How do we make sure that we actually break down the silos, as you said, but work in this value chain, in that business ecosystem. And I think that people look at BCA to give a bit of leadership in organizing that collaboration. You're going to do that, right? And the buildability discussion that we had is actually also about how do you start talking earlier to each other, right? How do we, as you pointed out. And finally, I think that what came out of this discussion is also the very important role of people. You started with that, Kim Yong, the very important role of people, and that probably will require reflecting on different working conditions, different relationships in the organization, maybe more life work balance than we had in our generation, etc. But it's important that we keep that in mind, that we need to attract the people to this sector in order to be able to transform and grow that sector. Thank you very much, and let's give them a warm round of applause. Thank you.
All right, thank you, panelists, and Professor Arnaud, from the Professor Emeritus from the Lee Kong Chian School of Business at SMU. And thank you, panelists, for the very interesting discussion. And unfortunately, we didn't have enough time for the very last part. I thought it was really, really interesting. I think now we have our favorite part of our summit, which is our networking break. So we have a 30 minutes networking break, and we have prepared for you bento sets. So enjoy the refreshments. And for those of you online, please enjoy your screen break, and I will see you in 30 minutes. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lead Summit 2022. And for those of you online, welcome back from your screen break. I forgot to remove my mask. Too used to our, probably too used to our SMMs. All right, so let us continue with our second segment on sharpening the innovative age. So once again, just a gentle reminder for all our audience on-site as well as online, our pigeonhole is already open for the second panel discussion later on. So remember to key in the passcode, and you can post your questions or upvote some of the questions which you want the panel to address. All right, so I think the QR code is already shown on the screens online and also on-site on the projection screens. All right. Our second presentation will be delivered by our keynote speaker, Mr. Sim Lim, Group Executive, Consumer Banking Wealth Management at DBS Bank, and also Chairman of BCA. And his presentation is titled, Leveraging Innovation to Grow and Transform. It looks at how the transformation journey which DBS embarked on and how to build up a culture and mindset for innovation. So without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Sim Lim on stage. Mr. Lim, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here, and I do feel a little bit out of place. You know, I stand here among all the illustrious developers, contractors, architects, and I'm wondering if I'm in the right hall, given that I'm probably the only banker here right now. So when I was asked to speak or to make this presentation, I was a little bit hesitant because I said, I'm really not an authority in your area in the built environment industry. But my chief executive assured me that, you know, we want to talk about digitization and innovation. And maybe I can share my experience on what we have done in DBS the last 13 years, you know, under Piyush and Peter's leadership. And then maybe you can take it as reference, how we approach it. And, you know, I'm sure all of you remember 13, 15 years back, we were really languishing behind our competitor. And from really the back of the pack, we have really moved forward. So I want to take this opportunity to share with you all our thinking process and how we put our vision, strategy, and the tactical execution to deliver what we have delivered. You know, I hope you guys are shareholders of DBS. You know, the share has done quite well. Now, not that I'm trying to sell DBS shares here, but just, you know. The presentation will be in three parts. The first part, I will talk in generic on the thinking on a macro basis on how we felt that we have to innovate and we have to transform ourselves. That's the first part. In fact, you know, earlier in the earlier discussion, you know, the discussion was on innovation, digitization. And to me, I'm a little bit surprised, given that I'm from a different industry, and is that not innovating is not an option. Like Minister said, if you don't innovate, it's actually riskier. So to me, it's quite a given that, if you don't innovate, you will die, and surely you will die. So you really don't have a choice. The sense of urgency, I guess, is more pronounced over the last 2 years than before, but I'll share with you our thinking and what we see. Then the second part of my presentation will be the business that I run. I run a consumer and wealth business, and I will show you what I've done in my business, how I actualize the vision and the strategy that's being set by my group CEO. And then the last part of my presentation will be a little bit on the built environment industry. That will be the shortest part since I know least about it. But hopefully, from the experience that we have, you guys can draw on it. So this is how I will pace out my presentation. Okay. Okay, the first part, we have this tagline, it's an internal tagline, we don't use it publicly. We call it B3W, we want to be a best bank for a better world, We've been awarded Best Bank and Best Digital Bank by international magazine, very prestigious finance magazine. And our motto is to live more, bank less. Not that you do less with us, but we are so embedded into your everyday life, you don't even realize that you're using DBS Bank. Now, we state our priorities. We list down sort of our mission and what is the fundamental foundation that will build this bank. I won't go into all of this. You can read it off the chart. But basically, this is how we sort of built the house of DBS. Now, we started off by saying that, if we look at the pace of innovation or the Industrial Revolution, in 1974, the first Industrial Revolution, when they were doing all this, textile, to the second industrialization, which is really the T-Ford production system, to the third industrialization. Now, maybe closer to home for us, given our age group, we understand the third Industrial Revolution a little bit better. Let me digress here a little bit because I'm quite passionate about this. When Russia sent Sputnik into space in 1957, the Americans were shocked that the Russian technology was ahead of the Americans. And when they sent Yuri Gagarin into space in 1961, they were even more shocked that the Russian technology was ahead of American. So John F. Kennedy retort was, let's put a man on the moon. That was his rally cry. And because of that, in 1969, they put a man on the moon, I think July 20th. Okay, and historians look back at 1969 as the start of the digital age, the third industrial revolution. I'll give you a factoid. The amount of, you see in the picture, all the servers that NASA had to put Apollo 11 on the moon, the power of the RAM, the random access memory, was 4 kilobytes, 4,000 bytes. Today, the mobile phone you hold in your hand is 6 gigabytes. 1.5 million times more powerful than what NASA had when they landed Apollo 11 on the moon. So you can imagine the kind of power that we have on our fingertips. Now, the fourth industrial revolution is really, instead of waiting for us all to pass on and some historian look back and say 2016 is the start of the fourth industrial revolution, what has happened is now economists has come out to name that this is the start of the fourth industrial revolution. And I think this is quite significant that we are realizing it as we are living it right now. So we look at the technology that's disrupting our world, okay? Artificial intelligence, big data, cloud, mobile computing, and connectivity. AI and big data, I don't know how many of you play the chess game, the Chinese game of Go. Li Sudo, the 10 times, 11 times world champion in Go, fought with Google, AlphaGo. And people say it would take 10 years before a machine can beat man. Well, the 10 years came early, it came 5 years ago, and the score was 4-1, 4-1. The reason why Go was so significant is, unlike chess, the game is so simple that you really have to think, whereas chess have a lot of rules on how the different pieces can move, whereas Go is just black or white and how you capture the land. And it's so simple, which is why it's so difficult. And AlphaGo could actually beat the 11-time world champion 4-1. In fact, the article written about it, it was really like the hand of God, and the way AlphaGo think. It wasn't just learning all the games that has been played in the past, but it could actually think for itself. I think it's quite significant. I think one day historian will look back at that day when AlphaGo played with Lee Sudo. That is a significant tipping point in terms of artificial intelligence. Now, data by itself is not good, because data is data is data is data, and we all had data in the past. How do you take data and transform it into information so you understand and can read about it? How do you take information and transform it into knowledge? And how do you take knowledge and transform it into wisdom? When you're able to take data to information to knowledge to wisdom, then you have insights. That's where you can make a difference. And this is where AI, combination of AI and data, it goes hand in hand, which is why it's so powerful as it is today. And I'll give you some examples on our thinking of that when I talk about how DBS has been transforming ourselves. Cloud computing, I think, is also something which is tremendous significant, because it gives birth to the rise of the fintech and all the small agile startup. You don't need to be a bank to compete with a bank. You can be a fintech that specializes in payments. You can be a fintech that specializes in FX. You can be a fintech that specializes in micro loans. So you can, in a way, it's like David and Goliath, and David you just fight. You're like an army fighting with the guerrilla. The guerrilla cannot fight with the army because they're not big enough. So you hit and run. You hit where you are strongest at, and you leave the rest of the fight, to someone else. So in a way, the bank is like the big giant, and the fintech hit us on where they are good at. So we have to respond, and if we don't respond, we'll be marginalized. Mobile, I've just spoke about mobile. In my opinion, the mobile phone is probably the most significant invention in the history of mankind to date today. We can't leave our home without our mobile phone, and the kind of knowledge, the kind of the impact. And what we can do with it now is, if we think about it, what other everyday device is so impactful as a mobile phone? So in a way, we take it for granted today, but it's really a significant thing. Then we talk about the connectivity, which is really the ecosystem, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I show my example on how we participate, how we orchestrate, or how we create. And depending on where you are in the country that you're in, sometimes you're a small player, you got to participate. If you're a big player, you can orchestrate. This one here, I combine data and AI, and I've just spoke about why these two go hand in hand. Then the other new technology that's impacting us, really blockchain, and then the AR, VR, the metaverse, that we talk about. In a way, when my daughter is a Trekkie, and she said something to me interesting many years ago, and she said that Star Wars is like a cowboy movie in the future, but Star Trek is like science fiction. Remember you pull up your phone and, some of you might remember they say, Scotty, beam me up, that Star Trek thing. Everything that they have there is becoming a reality. Even like in Star Trek, when you have a meeting, somebody comes out in like a, virtual self to make it more personal. All this that they have imagined is now becoming a reality. So again, there's implication to how you work with all this kind of new technology. So the first order is that we recognize what are the technology that's changing the world. Then when we look at sort of the world around us in banking, we look at all these platform giants that has come out. We look at cost versus efficiency, and we look at this, all this fintech that's unbundling, all this, how they unbundle banking, as I mentioned earlier. They just don't have to be a bank to fight with a bank. They just pick what they're good at to fight with us. And the platform company has taught us many things. And again, when I talk about cognitive banking afterward, I'll explain to you what that means. So understanding sort of the macro around us, the senior management, under Piyush's leadership and under Peter Seah, we said that we really need to transform ourselves. And I remembered that one meeting, I think that they had with Alibaba, we came out of the meeting and said, wow, Alibaba is going to have us for lunch, the way they are doing their ecosystem. and how they are really disrupting the bank. So we came out to say that to transform, we want to make banking joyful. Now, banking is one of the most boring one of the most boring things that you can do. You go to the bank, sometimes in some countries, you got to wait 3 hours. You got to, take half a day off to do a banking service. So we said we need to change it. How do we make banking joyful? So the first order is that we want to be digital to the core. So when people talk about, should we digitize? To us is that we have no choice. You have to digitize. We want to embed ourselves in the customer's journey. In the past, you come to the bank, it's my way or the highway. But the fintech has taught us that the customer's journey created by them is 1,000 times better than those that the bank has. So we have to rethink. And in a way, the fintech, although they are a competitor to me and they're trying to eat my lunch, they're actually the best thing that has happened in the banking industry, because it forces us to rethink ourselves. It forces the regulators to rethink. Because every time when we want to innovate, the regulators will always give us a no or this and that. Because it's safer to hold status quo. But because the fintechs has arrived, they also realize that they have to let us innovate. Sometimes, I fear this as an executive dealing with regulators. This one I wear my DBS hat. I always ask regulators, are you part of the solution or are you part of the problem? Now, of course, BCA, I hope you're part of the solution. Okay, the last part is how do we create a 4,000 startup? We don't claim to be perfect, but the idea is that we want to be agile, we want to innovate, we want it to be bottom up. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. We came up with this term Gandalf, which is the wizard in the Lord of the Rings. And there's Google, Amazon, Netflix, Apple, LinkedIn, Facebook. So we want to be the DBS in Gandalf. So these are sort of small points that we do to kind of rally our staff so that they understand the mission that we are on. So digital to the core. So from a bank that's being sort of legacy, waterfall, manual, project, always something big, analog, we have gone to microservice, cloud API, to be agile, to have platforms. And when we come up with a new product, we say design for no ops, design for no cash, design for no calls, design for no branch, that you can do everything, on the mobile phone, and we want to go paperless. So, we joke that instead of being the development bank of Singapore, we should be the digital bank of Singapore. And it's quite a relentless rally cry within the bank, and you'll be surprised, but we actually map out, as if we are climbing Mount Everest, and to be the best bank in the world, when we're on base camp, second, third, fourth, fifth, and what are the milestones that we have done to arrive where we need to go. So the vision for the entire team is very clear. And then from there, we go to sort of the next part, making DBS invisible, and that is to embed ourselves so that when you are buying a movie ticket, the payments come into your DBS account. We are so embedded in your life that you use us without realizing that you're using us. So we look at sort of what are the things that you do with us? What are the everyday life and goals that you have? We look at sort of your finance, and we look at sort of what is your way. So there are certain things that you do, once in a life. When you get married, well, some of us do more than once, but when you have your first kid, what are the significance? So in a way, banking is an industry whereby we can be with you from cradle to grave. We can really partner you all the way from, because in Singapore we have the baby account, so we actually want to engage with you. I know some of you here, probably do a lot of. I get this from clients a lot, and I get a bit upset, so let me digress a little bit here. Clients tell me, hey, I'm still in my bank with you since I was a baby. I've been with you for 50 years of my life. Now you don't even give me the treasures car that picked up me up from the airport. But what they forget is that when they were babies and when they were students, they have no money. Nobody wanted to bank them, and we are the one who bank them. And now that they are rich and powerful and they bank with the Swiss and American banks instead of banking with us. So please, it's a two-way partnership. So just as you want my loyalty, I want your loyalty too. Sorry, slight pitch, a little bit more for DBS. Okay, here we talk about reinventing and reimagine our banking with digital solution. So these are some of the examples that we have, whereby, facial recognition now is taken for granted, but it wasn't at first. Our PayLah is our everyday lifestyle app, not just your payments, but your everyday, your Kentucky Fried, your Golden Village, your Grab, or your Comfort, they'll go how to book your car. So your everyday life app is there's like a super app. Okay, and why is that? Is that we have to embed ourselves into your life. Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, bank don't care about you ordering your Kentucky Fried, but today we have no choice but to embed ourselves into it. Then we have a digital exchange that we have just launched recently, and we are now talking about teaching people how to retire. And we feel that that's very important because, like I said, from cradle to grave, we are your partner. And you'll be surprised, but the Economic Intelligence Unit rank how old a country is based on the median age of the country. And Singapore today is ranked about 35 or 36 oldest country in the world. Okay, but in 25 years' time, Singapore will be the third or the fourth oldest country in the world, from the way our demographics is moving and the lack of the low birth rate that we have. And because our population is small, the rate of impact hit us fastest. The oldest country in the world today is Japan, and 25 years later, it will be Japan. Number 2 and number 3, I think, is Germany and Italy fighting close by. We are number 35, but in 25 years' time, we will be number 3 or number 4. So, the importance of helping our people retire and plan for retirement, because a lot of Singaporeans are asset-rich but cash flow poor. So we have come up with, reverse mortgage, but instead of giving you the money, we give it to the CPF for it to be dividend out to you on a monthly basis when you retire. But you can still live in a home until you pass away. So we're coming with ideas to help you on how you retire. And then on the corporate side, we have all this facial recognition, verification for SMB. We have our app for, our corporate banking ideal app. We have our NAV planner, to help you plan for retirement. And we talk about ecosystem and marketplace. Okay, this one here, earlier we talked about ecosystem. Now, assuming in Singapore, I'm a big player. I'm the national bank here. I'm like the national bank. We can orchestrate. We can build an ecosystem. We have 5 million customers, and we can let other people participate in our ecosystem. Okay, but when we are in China or we are in India, we are a small player there. Then we have to participate in somebody's ecosystem. In Singapore, we are big enough whereby we can go out and create our own ecosystem. So depending on the position that you have in the country or in where you are, you can either participate or you can orchestrate or you can create. So for some of the bigger players here, if you are willing to take the lead to create or to orchestrate, I think there will be many of your, fellow friends here that will look to participate. But somebody needs to take leadership in that. The pillar I mentioned about the everyday app and why we need to embed ourselves with all the other partners, whether it's in transport, whether it's in more loyalty, whether it's in grocery, whether it's bill payments or entertainment. It's no longer a case whereby you come to bank, you need to do banking stuff. We must be embedded into your life. In a way, one way to think about it is that we are not just a bank, we are a technology company that's doing banking service. So you have to be a technology company that's doing contracting. You have to be a technology company that's doing architecture service, or you could be a technology company that's doing development or developing. I attended an executive program at Singularity University 4 years ago at Palo Alto, and I came away blown by it. The next 20 years, the new invention that we will see will be more than the last 20,000 years. So, we are at the tipping point of exponential growth. So again, like I said, I'm not in your industry, and maybe it's not fair for me to say because, banking is a service industry, whereas for you guys, you are really hard, brick and mortar, and you need the people on the ground to, build the beautiful buildings that you build, but not innovating is simply not an option for us. In fact, I think it's not an option for anybody because the way to think about it is that you should all think that you're a technology company offering the services that you're offering today. So the last part is really about strengthening our people and our culture. Now, a lot of people and a lot of organizations don't appreciate the culture part and they underestimate because it's like very flimsy. What exactly is culture? What does it mean? Does it feel good? But Peter Drucker, the management guru, said it best. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you don't have the right culture, your company cannot sustain over a long time. So culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is really a group of people that comes together. You share a common set of values, a common set of principles, and because of that, there's a common set of behaviors that's accepted, that's respected. That's what culture is all about. And if you don't build that, you can never be a great company. You might be great for a while under a very dominant leader, but in the long run, if you don't have that embedded in the DNA, you will falter. So this is also very important for us. So when we wanted to transform our leadership, we talk about psychological safety. We encourage junior people to speak up. We have a growth mindset. We have courageous conversation. We have feedback, and we try to collaborate. It's like all apple pie and motherhood statement, but you must have the underlying initiative to make sure that all this is being delivered. Okay, if we want to break the glass ceiling or whatever ceiling that we have right now, it's all about leadership. It takes customers' focus and collaboration to the next level, and we go beyond digitalization. I have this saying that everything starts and ends in one word: leadership. Be it a country, be it a company, be it a small unit, be it a small team, everything starts in one word: leadership. And the people here and the people online, I'm assuming very senior people in the respective organization. If you don't take the leadership to do it, nobody else is going to do it. It starts with you. So we want to be a startup now. Not that we are a startup because end of the day we are a big organization, but we call it ABCDE. We want to be agile. We want to be a learning organization. We want to be customer obsessed, data driven, and we want to experiment and take risks. Okay. I think the earlier panel also talked about agility. So the way we work in the past has always been very siloed. But now the way we work is very collaborative. And even the way we are organized, the way we sit, it's like you don't go to a typical office with just cubicles that isolate you. You really work you're organized in a more collaborative manner, and even in the way you sit. Now, again, another push that we are doing is managing through journeys. Like in the past or right now, many of us is vertically organized. So let's say if I'm in charge of credit card to acquire customers, I only acquire customers. If I'm in charge of credit card to do sales, I only do sales. I don't care about the rest. But if you have a promotion and something goes wrong, then your call center, overload with customers complaining, or your operations cannot keep up with the work that needs to be done. So now instead of organizing it whereby I only do that vertical function, we organize it whereby you are responsible for across, from acquiring the customers, doing the sales, making sure operations like technology follow up, and that the phone calls, if there's any emergency or anything that goes wrong, is all prepped, end to end. So the customer's journey is really superior. Be a learning organization seems quite straightforward, but we are again in the people's business, in the service industry. So knowledge is power. Knowledge is power in our industry. And I tell my private bankers, you are no different from another private banker. The only way to differentiate yourself is your knowledge, and how do you engage different kind of customers. If you don't have the knowledge and the ability to command that respect, you will never be more than an average banker. But across the organization, at every level, you have a curriculum on what you need to be on par, and then what you need if you want to be promoted, what is the next step and how you improve yourself. Then the next one is to be customer obsessed. We try to organize by control tower. So from our control tower, we know how fast is the turnaround, whether something is like moving up out of the ordinary. How do we respond? And if there's your debit card don't work when you call us, we should know that your debit card don't work without you calling us to complain about it. Now we're not 100% there yet, but the thinking is that this is how we got to be so customer obsessed that if you are whatever problems you run into, we have to be able to think ahead for you. So we go into a control tower mode right now, rather than a report generated the next day to show how well or badly you have done the past week. So the data has to be more or less live. So again, when you come to a website, how many minutes, how many seconds you spend on which page, the stuff that we send you, do you really read it? If you just click on it, open it, close it within 5 seconds, we know you didn't read it. But if you're there for 5 minutes, we know you read it. So from there, we can come up and we can observe your behavior, and we know what you're interested in. data-driven. It's really also tied with being customer obsessed, on how we understand data and how we build the capabilities, how we enable it. So we want to democratize data whereby, the whole organization, somebody builds the foundation and you can pull and do analysis on the fly. Today, usually you have to write a report on what you want, you give it to a business analytics person, then they go and do a report, 2 weeks later they come back, then say, oh, no, this is not exactly what I want, you waste another 2 weeks. Whereas this one here is by teaching everybody how to draw on the basic data, then from there, you can do your analysis, your analytics on the fly. And the last one is to just experiment and take risks. We are not very good at that. We are trying to be, it's easy to say experiment, take risks, and then we try to, that if it doesn't work, it fails, it's okay. The point is fail fast, but again, our Singapore very kiasu culture, not many people dare to do that. Okay, this is the first part of sort of the overall picture of what we have done in DBS, and how we have, transformed over the last 12, 13 years. Let me jump to the business that I run, and I'll level you through that. Actually, I'm not a consumer banker and I'm not a private banker, so I was quite surprised that Piyush asked me to run the consumer and private bank for him. I grew up 27 years with Citigroup. I worked around the world. If you've seen my bio right up, and I used to run markets. So I used to run dealing rooms, FX, derivative, bonds. And that was sort of the first 20 years of my life. Then the next 10 years, I really did general management in corporate and investment bank. I was country CEO. And then 4 years ago, Piyush asked me to run the consumer and the private bank. And my first question is that, are you sure you got the right person? Because that's not my background, And I remember what Piyush said. Piyush said, Sim, at this level, it's 70% leadership and it's 30% content. And you have good people working for you, so leverage them. So I said, okay, if you trust me and you're willing to let me try, then I said, okay, I will try. So we said, jumping the S-curve, what are we doing and how are we doing it are the two questions that I want to answer. You guys should know the S-curve, like the sigmoid curve. You go up when you have a new product, you do very well. After a while, it matures, then it starts petering down. So before you kind of taper off and come down, you better jump to the next S-curve. And actually, this also applies in all your career. For me, when I was with Citi, I was an international expatriate. So every 3-4 years, the bank will rotate me to a new country, to a new assignment. So actually, it was very privileged because every time you take something new, then you start on a new curve to progress. And because of that, I had a chance to work around the world. Okay, so last 10 years, this is where we are. Next 10 years, this is where we want to go. So those of you that haven't owned DBS shares, this is a good time because we're jumping the next S-curve. Okay, let me explain what I'm doing in my business. And this is the one page that kind of summarizes it. My vision is to help, since we're a business of finance, is to create wealth, enable success, and enrich your life, okay? And I have these 4 quadrants that talk about augmented banking, open banking, cognitive banking, automation banking. So when I talk about augmented banking, we want your experience with us to be so superior that you enjoy banking with us. I hope a lot of you use our app and find it so easy to navigate. Okay, and the response to augmented is called digitization. We digitize end to end. We do customs experiment. We try to do robo-advisor. We do biometric signature, and we're becoming with more things to augment your experience. The second quadrant is called open banking. And the response to open banking, we call it the rise of the ecosystem. So right now, we connect upstream, downstream, side stream, with everybody, who has a relationship with us to see how we embed and be part of the customer's journey. Whether, like I said, they buy Kentucky Fried or they go to a movie or they order a cab, how do we embed ourselves? How do we use API? And because technology let us connect that way, we are embedded into their life. I'll come to cognitive banking last because I want to talk a little bit more about that. Automation banking, is really a fancy word for straight-through processing. Banks have been doing this for 20 years. So when we come up with a new product, we try to say design for no ops, design for no branch, design for no cash. DFNO, DFNC, DFNB. And now let me talk about cognitive banking. Cognitive banking is really N equals 1, and that's the power of data and AI. Now, I'll give you an example. Netflix, or Spotify. Spotify knows the kind of music that I like, and because they know what I listen to. And then every now and then they recommend me similar kind of songs and similar kind of genre, similar kind of singers that I've now heard of. And I really like them because it's really what I like. Now, maybe 1 year later, they increased my subscription fee by $1. Okay, that's $12 a year. I will pay without batting an eyelid. And if they have 1 billion customers worldwide, they have $12 billion extra in regular revenue. Okay, so the power of cognitive banking. So like the bank in the past is that they blast the entire customer base and maybe a 2% hit rate. But today, if I know that Mr. A is interested in cybersecurity in Japan or in China or in metaverse, I only make sure I nudge the right information to him. We have 3 acronyms I didn't have here, but it's called Next Best Nudges, Next Best Conversation, and Next Best Action. So, I have 5 million customers. I cannot have relationship manager handling 5 million customers for the mass retail and the mass affluent. But like Netflix or like Spotify, how do I know what A, B, C is interested in? How do I nudge them so they self-fulfill? Now, I don't use Facebook a lot. I'm not a big what of Facebook. But on Facebook, I'll do maybe 5 transactions, a year. If I do $100, per transaction, it's $500. If there are 1 billion customers that do 5 transactions and it's $100 each, $500 billion of revenue. And Facebook is a few billion customers, and that technology gives us the ability to scale. So if we understand that and we know how to scale with it, every $10 you make from 1 billion customers is $10 billion. It's a lot of money that we're talking about. Now, of course, DBS is not that big, but even within sort of the environment that we are in, or the markets that we're in, how do we use next best nudges? Because I think it's very powerful. I think Angeline talked about hunting in the pack. This is exactly what we're doing. So in the private bank, we have 1 RM handling maybe 30 customers. But in my mass retail, I have 10 people, but they're not RMs, they're business analytics people, and they handle 500,000 customers. But they don't call any of the customers. They will experiment, they will use data, and they will see what this guy is interested in, and then they will try to nudge to see how much is being self-fulfilled. So we hunt in the pack, by using not relationship managers, but by using business analytics people. Then all these 4 quadrants have to be anchored by engineering banking, whereby from all this monolithic, we've moved to cloud, native, so and DBS acquired banks in Hong Kong, in Taiwan. So the back office was not the same, So the last 10 years we've been revamping our technology in the back end. So our budget for technology is in the billions of dollars, because we've been, really pulling it together. If you don't have that, given an organization our size, it's not going to work. Which is why, Piyush said we have more engineers in the bank than relationship managers. So we are really a technology company doing banking services. So this one here, again, linking our strategy to our vision. So this is really a summary of the earlier page, but from there you can see the big vision from DBS Group, and sort of my vision, for the consumer group. Now, then the next step is that how do we actualize the vision that we have, okay? And we said that there are 10 questions that we must answer in each quadrant. Okay, so there's a definition. What is augmented banking? That's an objective. What do we want to do in this quadrant of augmented banking? What is the outcome that we want to measure to make sure we deliver what we say we will do? What is the government process to make sure that the discipline is kept? What is the job to be done? What are we trying to do here? Okay, then who are the customers? Is it mass retail? Is it wealth customers? Then what are the touch points that we use? And what are the key initiatives that we have to deliver the strategy against that quadrant? And what are the platform, that's being involved? And which country is impacted? This is all my consumer banking division countries. So we pictorize it by doing it this way. So we say that who is building the foundation of this quadrant? Then who is doing the first floor? Who's doing the second floor? And what are the initiatives, on the back of the foundation that's being built? And what is the job to be done, to deliver this augmented banking, this superior customer's experience? And what are the touch points? Who are the customers? And what is the objective? So from the big picture of what the strategy is, when people ask, Mr. Lim, how are you responding to the fintech? I want all my bankers to be able to explain to their family members, to their cousins, to their kids, to their friends, in the one page, that the response from us is that, 4 quadrants that we have, and the tactical execution, is really quadrant by quadrant. What are the 10 questions that we answer to deliver this? So this one is open banking, which is basically sort of the same concept, which is the connection with the API. So the questions are the same, the answers are different, to deliver open banking. I don't have enough time to go over one by one, but you get the general picture of what I'm trying to do here. So again, we built a house. What is the foundation for this this initiative, for this quadrant, and then who's building the first floor, second floor, third floor, and all the way to the top. And then this is cognitive banking. So again, what are we trying to do here? What is the objective? How do you measure the outcome? What is the governance? And then from there we do sort of the build the house against it. So you get the gist of what I'm trying to do here. So this is automation banking, and then we talk about designing for no ops, no calls or no cash, and no branch. And again, what is the foundation? What are the how do we reduce paper? What's the who's impacted, and what do we replace? Okay. And the last one is really the core, which is the infrastructure and technology that we deliver. So this one here again, the same concept. So we have gone from a product improvement, then we went to look at journeys on how the journey evolved. Then we went on to platform. Now we are really looking at data, and now we are looking at managing through journeys. So rather than the vertical organization, we are looking at horizontal organizations now, and how do we do things at scale. So on the back of that, hopefully you get a picture of the thinking at the top level, then sort of the thinking at my level, for business that I run, and then and with that we want to be a best bank for a better world, and we're very proud that Harvard has actually named us as one of the 10 companies that has really been a leading company in transformation, for the last decade. So we are quite proud of that. And then again, this is some of the accolades that we won. So be the best, be the change, be the difference. So let me jump to the last part, which is really the built environment of what BCA is trying to do. I won't go into so much detail, because I'm not the expert in this area, and I think Calvin's earlier presentation covered most of it. We talk about what's our strength, our weakness, our opportunities, and our threat, and we talk about the future. I've asked them to see if they can think in line with the way I think in banking. How do we augment the service that we do to you? How do we make it a joy and a pleasure to deal with us? Maybe we're not there yet, but we have that in our mind. The open service is, I think, the Connex X that Kelvin mentioned earlier, on how we connect with our brothers' stat bot, so that when you submit, it's submitted, and it's sent to all the stat bots that's involved, so that you don't have to repeat. So there's a form of open services whereby we connect with all the other stat bot. And cognitive thinking is really how we use data. I know in the earlier discussion, people are talking about sharing research, sharing data, but this one, you guys will have to decide whether you want to do it, because data is a proprietary asset. If you are able to share it, that's great. But I would think that many companies would be quite hesitant about sharing your in-house research or your in-house innovation, because it's a competitive advantage for you. But this is where maybe BCA can come in, to be the neutral man to help the industry, and one of the things that I think of is that maybe through the academy, we can really see what are the best practices or the best innovation that they have outside, and we show it from the academy, and let everybody who wants to leverage into it. Maybe we can be a more neutral party to do that. Then automation, of course, is to promote automation and to leverage technology for that. Okay, my last slide is really maybe my one ask of you all. I've been discussing with the management team, and I've also talked to some players in the industry, but maybe to a greater audience here. Why don't you write to us, write to Kelvin, and tell us, 5 things that you want from us, okay? Now, not that we will do all the things that you want from us, because I hear a lot of rumblings, on the industry. So I said that, why don't we engage all of you and say that you tell me 5 things that you want, and then let's categorize it. One, the first part, things that are really good ideas we'll be doing for you in the next 12 months, or these are good ideas, we'll look at it and we want to do it in the next 2-3 years. Then second section, section 2, what are the things that you are asking which is above our pay grade, that you are barking up the wrong tree, that this is a URA or an SLA or an IRS place that you go. So stop, coming to us, because we can't do anything about ABSD. Go to IRS. So we want to be very clear. And then there are certain part whereby it cuts across different stat boards. Then that one we can say that maybe we ask the minister to take the lead. Then the last part, section C, is some of you ask. We have to tell you that stop dreaming, ain't going to happen, because it's not reasonable. But at least, by hearing you and responding to you, we want you to be part of the solution on how we want to transform the industry. Like I said, I'm the least qualified man in this room, to speak about the building industry. But I hope that, my sharing of what we have done in DBS, how we have approached innovation, how we have approached digitization, and sort of the macro concept of what's happening in the world that's impacting us. And that's why we felt the need to change and change it so fast. And in a way, we have, to some extent, we have done it. I mean, we still got a long way to go, but we have made good progress. So for you, in your industry too, rather than doing the same old, you got to take one step back, look at what's happening in other countries, what are the best practices, why it makes sense, and dream the built industry that you want, then work backwards, because if you're not, you're constrained by what you know, and only what you know, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know, so if you don't approach it the other way around, it'll be hard to break out of the mold that you are in. Again, thank you very much. I end my presentation. I mean no disrespect for this industry. I hope you don't take it because there's none man, and I wanted to share with you, and maybe from an outside perspective, there are things that I don't understand. So, forgive me if I said something wrong. Right? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, for your wonderful sharing of your journey in DBS. And hopefully the suggestions will help us in our transformation journey as well. So, Chairman, maybe I can have you to be seated. All right, so with our thoughts and the stage set on innovation ignited, I think it is time for our second panel discussion. And the theme for this panel discussion will be sharpening the innovative age. Of course, this panel will seek to discuss on how this new era of innovation can bring about more new opportunities and also lift BE businesses to succeed and contribute to the future of Singapore's economy. So may I invite our moderator, Architect Tan Shao Yan, who is the Group Chief Innovation Officer at CPG Corporation. Architect Tan, please. And of course, joining him as well as Sim Lim on stage, Chairman on stage, it's a lineup of very exciting panelists. Engineer Aaron Tan, Managing Director at KTP Consultants, Mr. Kim Yoon Yong, Cluster President at Schneider Electric, Mr. Paul Chong, President and Group CEO, Certis Cisco, and last but not least, Mr. Alan Tan, Managing Director at United Tech Construction. So ladies and gentlemen, on-site as well as online, keep your questions coming in. Our panel, our Pigeonhole is already open. So if you want to get onto the Pigeonhole website, you can scan the QR code right at the top right-hand side for the on-site audience. And of course, for the online audience, we will flash out the QR code in a moment, and it's up right now. So remember to key in the password and post your questions. All right, I think the panelist is ready, so Architect Tan, over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, so we have a lineup panel of, I think, carefully selected by the organizer. We have Mr. Lim, I think you have heard him. He brings perspective outside our industry, which I think is very much needed. We have Aaron. Oh, okay, you can take out. Huh? We have Aaron. Aaron is a consultant engineer. So one of the steward of our industry. We have Alan, right? Alan for Kim, sorry. Kim. Okay, Alan's the other side. The two look like brothers. Okay. Kim is from Schneider. So technology, but I think it's both product and solutions, right? Solutions and solution providing. So I think from a technology side, bringing the technology perspective to our industry, but very much related to the built environment. We have Paul. Paul is Satish. Okay, so the question about Paul's perspective is that he brings the value chain of the built environment downstream. After usually we talk about construction and then our focus is stopping at construction. But what's more important, most part of the building value chain or built environment value chain comes from downstream, right? So Paul give us some perspective from the building operation. And then we have Alan. Alan is a United Tech builder, but the innovative builder. So you hear, I think, quite a bit of interesting story from him later on. So okay, so I think having heard from Mr. Lim Sim Seng about how DBS has embraced technology, digital technology, but more importantly is how the work processes, the total redesign, rethinking, and cultural change to transform DBS services. Okay, I'm particularly appreciative of the way he has shown us how not just a high-level vision, but how do you translate that into a very detailed roadmap and all the different investment and different steps, all the big steps, big stages, micro steps. I think he's very generous in showing us that roadmap. And so that's one example of a transformative roadmap. You need a vision, you need a bold leadership, sense of leadership, but you also need to translate it into implementable roadmap, right? And then take steps, and then bring the people along. So that is one very good example. We also know that as consumer, as user who benefit from many of the transformation services, right? How Grab has actually impacted the transport services. There are many, many other examples. So technology impacts everyone, okay? And we being in Singapore, we are small and open, right? We obviously do not have the option of closing up. We have to be very open, which means that all these digital technology advancement, all that are coming in, okay? So our only option is that we have to be smarter and quicker in making technology work for us. And I want to say this, that I think most of you who are from the BE environment, people who know me know that I'm an architect. But I've taken on the role of Group Chief Innovation Officer for CPG for about the last 3 years. And part of my job is about going around connecting with people, the networking people in the innovation circle. And I can definitely say this, it's very clear that Singapore has committed very serious efforts and investment in building up innovation ecosystem from many things, from building up Singapore as an innovation hub, financing hub for innovation, bringing in entrepreneurs, grooming our local talent, as well as bringing in best or promising entrepreneurs to Singapore to set up firms, so on and so forth. So Singapore is shaping up to become an innovation center, okay, at least in the region, if not globally. So against such a backdrop, against this backdrop that's building up, Singapore being an innovation hub. So let's turn our attention to the built environment sector. So surely we want our sector to be, not to be excluded, right, from this whole innovation party. We want it to be, participate in this party. And because we face many challenges, all the more we need to harness these things that's the innovation party that's happening. Okay, so with that, we have discussed with the panel. We have organized this panel discussion into two main segments. The first segment is about the building up innovative ecosystem. Okay, so innovation is no longer should we do it? It's a must, right? I think a lot of messages early on is that what's the Mr. Lim's? It's not an option. Okay, it's not an option. We must do it, right? So the first part will be discussing about how do we build up a BE innovation ecosystem. So let's start by asking the panelists, what is their vision? Okay, we face many challenges, but as a start, let's put aside all these challenges. We will want to talk about if we reimagine a healthy BE industry, what does it look like? And because Mr. Lim had just finished a very comprehensive keynote, I'm going to be kind to him and let him speak last. We'll start from that side. Alan.
My vision of a healthy BE sector, I mean, first of all, without the doubt, we need to be productivity, less labor reliant. This is, without the doubt, is one of the factor that we need to continue to work on. And along this process, the BE sector has to be technologically driven. As Kelvin rightfully highlighted, our sector is lag behind in many technological tools. But having said that, I think I believe with effort we should be able to get there. And I think emerging from this COVID-19, I think there is also a call for us to have a kind of collaboration. In my view, maybe form alliances is probably one of the healthy partnership that we should focus on. And obviously, we need to have a healthier environment. We need to continue to carbon reduction, more products to make the living healthier. And along these changes, hopefully, you bring more talent. We need more talent in the industry. Now, how to shake away our cowboy image? When I was a young guy, frankly speaking, I come to construction. It's not because I like construction, frankly speaking. It's because I need money. And I knew it's a cowboy industry. I knew Kim Jong say cannot be 5-day weeks. I knew that. But today, the younger generation has changed. They no longer look at those things that I consider as important. So we need to shake away the cowboy image. And lastly, most importantly, I think for the BE sector to be healthy, we need to be cost effectiveness. Whatever solution we come out with, whatever proposal we come out with, let's be honest about it. We are a business unit. We need to be cost effectiveness. Our client, the developer, need to be comfortable the way we build, the way we bring the solution has to be cost effective. They also have their problem, right? The whole value chain, all the stakeholders are all having the same problem. We need the healthy BE sector must be all eventually are the winner. Now, to be a winner, we need to be sustained in our business. I think basically this is what I think a healthy BE sector should be in the future.
Thanks, Alan. Paul?
Thank you, Shao Yan. As you said earlier, I will speak from a perspective as a security and FM service provider, right? And as just as the design and build is a very big part of the whole BE ecosystem, but the experience of actually what you get out of a building or facility is very much affected by somebody like us who actually operate the building, and whether you get a good experience or you get a shitty experience. So I will speak from the perspective of having been in that space for a couple of years now. I see there are two big challenges that we face in this space of doing security and FM. The first big challenge is something we're all very well aware of, the rising labor costs. Due to both wage regulations and also, I would say, supply chain constraints. So even today, if you're prepared to pay, you don't necessarily get the bodies to come forward to do the job. I think we have spoke about various things. In the construction industry, we talk about long hours. Likewise in security, likewise in FM. So that is the first challenge we all have to find ways to overcome. And I dare say that there's only one way to overcome that, which is to be more productive, to use more technology and use less people, right? And maybe I come to the second big challenge I see, and that affects our ability to solve the first problem. Right? The second challenge I see is in what I would call record keeping. One of the things that I realized is very poor in the having come into the FM and the built environment space is a lot of important records are not there. You know, one of the big challenges we face all the time when we get a new assignment is what are all the assets I'm supposed to maintain? And very often, even the owners themselves struggle to put together an inventory list of what is supposed to be in the building. And I dare say that the digitalization is therefore a very important transformative process for the whole built environment ecosystem. Because it's only with good, accurate data that you can engineer improvements. Whether it is to drive productivity, I can only drive the people and resources to the right place at the right time if I know what's the asset and I know the condition of the asset, right? But today, I don't have an exhaustive and complete list of that. And so that's where I think the earlier panel, the conversation that I think Angeline raised about, you know, having created the BIM and then having it deposited somewhere and having these records maintained up to date so that they can be easily extracted and worked on by the subsequent operators downstream is very important. Because if we don't do this, then we can never transform the industry because the data will be what we call very dirty, right? You can't be sure of the data. So better record keeping, an accurate way of doing this accurately and with less laborious way of maintaining it will improve what I would call visibility and the quality of outcomes. And so with this digital proof of service that something has been done, we'll get to improve the overall ecosystem because you can't improve what you don't know. And so as a participant in this ecosystem, I must say that Certis, we also publish data, right, for our customers so that they can then use this data to improve their own systems. So one way is we can publish a lot of information relating to work done. And if they do have a digitalized backend, they can process this very easily. And I want to give a real example even within Certis. We use the DBS Digital Bank a lot, right? And because of the connectivity that we have with them, no, because today they are the only bank who can do that, right? Today we process the claims for all our 20,000 staff in Singapore, right, within 15 minutes. And 15 minutes is just we can actually do it instantaneously, but we dare not make that promise. So we say 15 minutes. Today you scan a claim to us, okay, it's almost instantaneously, right, through DBS, we'll make the payment to your bank account. Right? And so, of course, we obviously have a back end to make sure no fraud and all kind of things. But all this is only possible because we have a way to interlink. Right? But today, I can't do this with many of the properties that we maintain because there's no BIM for me to download. There's no asset list for me to download. And there's no way for me to publish back, you know, to the owner or our customer, right, the digital data that they can then use, right? So I feel quite sorry actually for a lot of the property managers because they have to process tons and tons of data, right? All the work orders and they had to kind of sign off, otherwise finance won't pay and kind of stuff. You know, it's a hell of a lot of work. And if we don't re-engineer this process and digitalize it, I think it is hard to drive productivity within the built environment, I must say.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul. So I want to tune the conversation back. So Paul, I appreciate your comment, but I want to extract out the value is that you want to see that the BE environment is number one, more productive, right? Number two, data, how the data are transmitted, the integrity, the usefulness, right, is there, right? That is the world we want to see. What you highlighted is the problem we face today. That is actually the second thing I wanted to ask. What is stopping us, right? But you have, it's fine. You have laid out already. Okay, and I want to highlight we want to empathize on this. Very often when we want to imagine a better BE, we are bogged down by the problem we face today. And sometimes that holds us back from imagining the future. But it's real, this is a real problem. We need to empathize on this, recognize it, then we know how to move from here to where we want to be, right? So, but the world, called the world that we want to be is one that the data are intact, right? We don't deal with the siloed data, segmented data. It's there. The question is how to use, almost like banking. Once you have that data collected, the next thing is that how do you apply analytics? How do you pull out usefulness from those information, right? From those data. From data to information, to knowledge, to wisdom, right? So that is a journey banking industry has shown us. We are now at this first step. It's about getting the data structured and cleaned up and collect them. Okay, so that's Paul's comment. So with that, let's shift a bit of perspective. We go to Mr. Kim.
Hello.
I think you start talking. I think they'll switch.
Can I? Okay. Good, thanks. So first of all, I would like to thank you, BCA, for inviting us to share a little bit about technologies and innovation and Schneider. Schneider is not a lift company. It's an energy management and automation company. In fact, our core is very much into the digital solutions for the sustainability. And that's where we are today. And we know that Singapore is one of the countries that has the most unprivileged source of energy, which is basically all imported, as well as very much not clean energy yet, right? And it's important to make sure that we all use the energy in a most effective way and efficient way. And more than 35% of energy is consumed in buildings, either commercial, residential, in building aspects, right? And we know that this segment, BE segment, has been a big challenge and one of the most resilient segment in the world, especially in Singapore, due to many different factors of COVID, as well as the borders closed and the workforce dependency in the foreign countries. But in the same time, as being very resilient as well, is one of the segments that I hear is one of the most resistant to adopt the technology. And that's not I'm saying, but it's what we hear a lot. Recently, we have been doing some survey, what we call Green Singapore Green Pulse survey. And there we have a lot of data that shows that more than 9 out of 10 people believe that energy and sustainability is one of the important topics for the buildings and for Singapore as a country. But the question is, how many of you have a clear plan on how we navigate in this journey? And that's some of the questions that out of 10, maybe less than 4 responded positively. And then when we talk about innovation, adoption, and technology adoption, they believe that 9 of 10 is believing that we have, yes, this is really helping the future of the country and future of the segment. But in fact, at the end, only 27% is really ready and understand what are the technologies that should be used to be adopted. And I think here the question is about adoption of technology, because technology is everywhere, and we can see in many countries. And building is not an industry that is only in Singapore, it's everywhere in the world. And we have countries that we can benchmark, as well as there are a lot of benchmarking aspects out of Singapore as well. And when we see the technology adoption is one of the difficult parts. And it's about what he mentioned, is about we have a lot of data, right? But what we do with the data, right? And I think Mr. Sim mentioned as well about what you do with data. Is garbage in, garbage out, or you use the data to make it as a knowledge, right? To make it as a dream, right? And that's, I think, is the most important element. Well, I can take one of the example here that we have a lot of course, my partners and customers sitting here. And one of them, which is CDL, Mr. Chai, and in fact, the CDL has been recognized as the corporate NICE number 5 in the world out of the top 100 companies. Why? Because it's a mindset, it's a journey. Doesn't it start overnight, right? It comes from long history, long journey. And at the end as well, using the right technology, using the software, using the things that is much easier to manage your data. So many companies today on the sustainability, because we now need to report sustainability reports every quarter. But still, we are doing Excel spreadsheet. It's very difficult, right? When you have a software, you have a technology to gather this information and put in a space that you can online every day, every hour, every month. you can have that solution, is much easier. And when you monitor and you measure, it's better and easier to improve. So that's a little bit, just a short speech on what Schneider brings as a technology and how technology can be adopted and not only use technology for the sake of technology, but in fact, using for the benefit and for the efficiency and the productivity of the technology.
Okay, thanks. Aaron?
Thanks, Xiaoyan. I would like to bring in a perspective from a consulting engineer, which is essentially quite a service industry. So our take, in our company, in KTP, technology and people, they are actually side-by-side lever arm. Technology can be used to enhance what the people do, but at the same time, you also have the same lever arm from the people who say, I need this technology to achieve so and so. But between the people and the technology, I think what is important for us is still what are the core objectives that underlies the work that we do, the service that we give. So how we did it is, I give you an example. Our objective, for instance, relying on the mega trends of sustainability. Everybody knows that, look, we have to go green, we have to be sustainable. So the objective have to be set correctly. For us, we have to reduce carbon footprint. That is the objective. The objective is not to find a technological solution or how do I automate the process, because that naturally is a byproduct, an essential tool to fulfill that objective. So to us, in that regards, integrated digital delivery, if I may just put it in a bit more upfront, was that in fact, we started this journey more than 12 years ago when we first started the roadmap, like what Sim showed, the S-curve. Simply because going digital was not an objective in mind. We knew that back then that the future of the industry where collaboration is what is going to drive the product that we have was getting more and more obvious because of cost pressures, because of labor pressure, because of the final demand from the consumer. So that is where I think as we move ahead, right, we respond to your question of what is a healthy built environment. I think it has to be a collaborative environment with equitable return to every part of the stakeholders. Because I think that is where you can actually galvanize people at the backdrop towards that common objective. They say, hey, we want to achieve this efficient product, this layout. It can go to the market, it can sell, it can be buildable, it is cheap, it is something that we can maintain from cradle to cradle, because our job doesn't stop at the end of the construction. How do we deal with the feedback that we get as the job go along? Because as a qualified person, we sign the job for life. For life, actually. I don't know whether it makes business sense or not, but that's the way that it is. So I think that framework, right, to find a way that, every party, you say, if I push, I'll put my head on the table to drive this innovation within this ecosystem, you have to be rewarded equitably. And I think this would be a future of sharing, because the guy with the most muscles and liability to shoulder should be the one that takes the larger pie. So I think that to us is a way of us, it is still driven by people. What is the common objective? That is the real work that we want to do, underpinned by, like what Sim said, knowledge, because we are selling knowledge. That is what differentiates us as professionals, as compared to somebody whom you can just engage with a Zoom call in Bangladesh or India or China. So I think we need to think about that. How do we safeguard our own longevity? Be it you want to view it in a selfish manner, or do we want to say, hey, this is what value that we can continue to create, but we are leveraging on all this technology. It's a given. We have to use it, right? Whether it's digital, whether it's AI, whether it go into the metaverse world, how do we change the NFT? I think all these are natural, but the core principle is still service. These are the good work, these are the good structural design, these are the good architectural design, these are the good building product that we are going to deliver to the market. So that got to be the key objective. The rest we continue to support via the various tools.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, thanks. I think innovation, digitization, I'm preaching to the converted. I think the people here probably have bought into it already, but there's one angle that I want to bring up, and again, I think your industry is slightly different from banking because you're a service industry, whereas you actually build, buildings and monument brick and mortars. So one of the things that I hear a lot of gripes is the supply of labor, and I want to challenge the industry that instead of always complaining that the supply of labor is a constraint, and we really have 1 million, workers in this country, of which 35% is the construction industry. Have we ever thought of, how we can build without using the same, cheap labor from the subcontinent? Sometimes when I see, things being viral on the way other countries are building, the technology they use to lay bricks or to do things, it's very different, it's automated, and I don't know if we have it in this country, but starting from that end, especially for those who are actually doing the brick and mortar, are there new ways of doing things, besides just, saying that we don't have enough labor? So that one I want to challenge the industry to think out loud, that between now and let's say 5 years ago, that part of the equation changed, or is it the same old thing that we are doing? I think the service part, the data part, the system part, I think everybody buys into it that they have to innovate on that front.
Let me summarize the kind of vision or different perspective from each of the panelists, but I think we collect them together. So we talk about productivity. The BE sector that we want to see is productive, highly productive, collaborative, right? More healthy. Surely there's competition, but it's also healthy competition. Various collaboration, various alliances are formed. When you come to operation, right, the outcome of the BE product, when you come to operation, the experience for people must be much better. Data must flow, right? The digital assets and all that. Data must flow. Okay, then the people who apply innovation. Okay, sustainability, right? That is a big question. One of the outcomes is sustainability, energy efficiency. So the BE must be one that be less carbon intensive, reduce carbon emission, more energy efficient, okay? Support sustainability goals. And people who bring that outcome, realize that outcome, must be rewarded in equitable way. Fair, reasonable, equitable way, right? And then also move away from labor-intensive methods that we are using today. More automation, more robotic. Okay, so there's a kind of vision. I think nobody would argue with that. And then with that kind of vision, the question is, we want to, in a way, sustainable ways to draw in talents, right? Future generations of talents come in, there's a sense of purpose, feel rewarded, stay, right? We retain them, and then we can build up a sustainable ecosystem. So the next question is this. What are the obstacles today we are facing that actually is stopping us from realizing this vision? So this comes to more about today. If this is so given, right, such a given, how come we are not there yet? What is stopping us? So who would like to start first? Maybe the local boys.
I can venture. Let me try to answer in a different way. Now, if you look at Tencent, which is a very successful company today, okay, I am very sure when they first started the company, what they are today and the vision that they have today are not in sync. But they are really like a startup, do things that make sense, that benefit the consumer. And with that, they develop a business model to it. A lot of us who are like big businesses, when you submit a plan to do something, your first question your boss asks you, what's the business model? Where's the revenue? You look at WhatsApp, okay? WhatsApp, there's no revenue, but they did that because they believe that it's something useful, people can communicate, it's very short, and look at where it is today. That from the data that you have, there's different businesses develop from it. So sometimes it's easy to say that, like when we develop PayLah, there's no money in PayLah, because we are creating all this infrastructure, we're letting you send money easily, but we don't charge you a single penny for it. But we believe that it's something that will be good for the customers, it's easy for them to use. And then on the back of that, sometimes then different opportunities open up. So a lot of this fintech, they start off by doing, does it make sense? Does it enrich the customer's life? Is it a good customer's journey? And then from there, the business model come out from it. I think a lot of us big businesses start the other way around, that there must be a business model first before we can do it. If I have gone to my boss and used the Tencent model and say we should do this, boss, but I have no idea how I'm going to make money, he'll throw me out of his office, right? So the advantage of fintech is that they have money to burn, and sometimes, many fail, but those succeed because they do something that's really resonate with the mass public, and then from there the business model comes.
So this is very interesting because the startup funded by venture capitalists, and that model is very different from the traditional businesses. Traditional businesses always have to justify a business case before you take the step. So this is what you said, right? Experiment small, take some risk. Take some risk.
We are, but we are not very good at that.
If you fail small, right, and then you move. But even from failure, you learn.
Yes.
And then you adapt that failure into success, right?
Yep.
So this is a part that is very different from the traditional businesses. And I think the brick and mortar industry is the most traditional, one of the most traditional. The building is one of the oldest trade. Okay, so this is something we need to bear in mind. Any other views on issues? This is a time where you should highlight the issues that are confronting us, right? Alan.
Talking about technology changes, yes, we all agree. We need to have more technological tools, but the problem is to implement all this, you need money. You need money. Not many company lucky like Kim Yong. For example, there are many builders like me, young company, less reserve. How are you going to invest? Because this is a long-term thing. We need continuing business volume, right? At least minimum, medium terms, we have, you are confident of sufficient volume, right? These are the hurdles that we need to think about. And then also we need to, by and large, our industry is very limited with technological tools. We're still very far behind. But having said that, we also see some light in the tunnels. I mean, a few years ago, it was unimaginable. A robot coming to do my building, part and parcel of my building works. Well, I can tell you 2 months back, I'm very happy Sindra brought a robot and really demonstrated to me that it helps at least to drill and insert the bolts for the lift shaft erection. This is something very encouraging, And the other hurdle is also R&D capability. We also lack of R&D capability, So these are the things now linked in a way with the limited people that we have. Obviously, we've been talking so much about talent. We need more talent people. So obviously, these are all interlinked. We need to overcome all these kind of hurdles in order to move to a better technologically driven kind of BE sector.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, if I may compliment, I think it's a very important point, as he mentioned, about making money, right? Because at the end is, as we heard in the beginning, is this segment is about design, build, operate, and maintain. And actually in all those 4 phases, there are different interests and priorities in different levels and different moments, right? And then, of course, whenever you want to make it as cheap as possible and efficient building, but as well, you want to make it a futuristic or smart building or future of the building kind of iconic concept, then it's always a trade-off between how you're going to invest more, how you're going to be able to afford much more than what you have as a budget, right? In that sense, when you integrate the whole view of these 4 phases in a way that you understand the TCO end-to-end perspective, it will be much easier to work in a way that you get the best out of it. But that comes back to your first question as well, how the ecosystem will work, because it has different interests, and how you can, the ecosystem work as well as the software, data, and information brings together to allow us to make the right decision that is not only for sake of being a smart building, but for sake of being productive in the maintenance, productive in the operation.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because when someone takes a holistic view, a bit of capital investment upfront may lead to a lot of benefit downstream, right? The question is, sometimes the people who are investing in the front part may not enjoy the benefit that comes back at the back part. So upfront, they hold back on that investment. So this is the problem, one of the problems that the built environment sector is facing, because there are so many stakeholders, so many different interests, and sometimes it's owned by different parties, right? So this is an existing problem. Let's recognize that. Aaron, you want to say something?
Thanks, Xiaoyan. I think it is, I wouldn't view it as constraints, surrounding us. I just view it as the way that we are doing business today. And again, I'm speaking from an angle of a consulting engineer. We are so bogged down by the daily delivery works that we have that we cannot even really sit down, to put it in a mild manner, have a nice cup of coffee without being edgy about, hey, I have a next meeting to attend to. I think ultimately it is the mindset of the leaders, and of course the every level of the organization, to say that we want to innovate, and the organization must find a way to so-called share the risk, find a way to reward, and that is from the micro level, right? Because if we cannot even sort out our own internal organization, there is no need to talk about the ecosystem. But then it also comes a point whereby whatever innovation that we put out, it has to be supported by the organization, by the ecosystem that is outside us. BCA is one of them, the authorities, the stakeholders, and of course our end product customer, the developers, the builders. So I think everybody got to wear that hat, and that brings back to my original point of so-called risk sharing, right? If nobody is willing to put their head out and say, hey, can we try out this new alternative method? The performance may be slightly different, but it is acceptable to the other parts of the world. Why is it not acceptable to Singapore? So I think this is, it relates back to the mindset change of all the people to say, hey, let's not stick to what we are used to. All right, can we tolerate a little bit more movement? Because I quote you an example, something that is so-called, very, very productive. It is not very cost effective. But if your objective is cost effectiveness, it may not be very, very productive. So ultimately, I think there will be different bags of priorities. There are different pillars of objectives that we are trying to achieve. I don't think there is one stroke that can fit all. We can't boil the ocean, I think, but we allow sparks of innovation to serve its own different objectives that make sense to the stakeholders, to the public at large. I think we should be guided by thoughts like that, whether in policy formulation or whether in the execution of operations. And importantly, that this message is cascaded down to every level of our people, especially the young ones that's joining us. Because they want to have the cake and eat it. I think that's the reality. Most of our younger employees, don't say sad. The reality is that they will be our bosses someday. So I think they are thinking about, look, we want something that we can have bragging rights, but we also want, got to be, how do you balance that bragging rights with so-called something that serves the need of the clients that we are serving, the population at large, and of course that reasonably toe the line of where the authority guidelines are. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Aaron, and then Paul.
If I may share an anecdote illustrating this problem of the various part of the value chain, right? Certis, we operate in Hong Kong too, right? I mean, this is nothing like against Hong Kong or whatever, but the practice there that the developer builds and after that handover creates a kind of strange kind of optimization. So I'm talking, I mean, one of the properties we manage, right, is a fairly high-end condo, okay? Every night, my security guard goes to every floor and manually turns off all the aircon units on every floor. And every morning, before everyone wakes up, he goes again, go up, and then turns on every single split unit and that's the disconnect, right, between the cost. In Hong Kong, developers even sell the car park lot, right? And that's the way their construct is. And so if I may go back to I think that big ask from chairman about giving feedback and complaining to BCA. As a trained economist, right, I see this as what is called a classical market breakdown, okay, where the free market doesn't actually adjust, and optimizes, because if you believe in the, Adam Smith, they say the invisible hand regulates. But I think this is a clear case where there's a market breakdown and the invisible hand doesn't operate well. And so this is where I think regulation must come in, right? I don't know whether this is under BCA, under URA, under IRAS, or under MOM, right? Safety and all that. But somehow, all these regulations, right, need to come in a manner that kind of like steer the market towards operating in such a manner. Because I share with you another real example in Certis. When I first joined, I struggled trying to get the working hours for security guards down. We are the only industry in the whole of Singapore where people are allowed to work more than 72 hours of overtime. More than 72 hours in a month. And it has taken me more than 10 years of lobbying, right, before they finally agreed that this is absurd, right? And so I think last year or the year before, that's when we started finally 72 hours cap, and you can't work any more than that. And that forces the whole industry, nobody to try to get a cheaper price but working people harder. Okay, and so that is now history, right? Everybody now work on the basis that they have to fully comply with the MOM regulations, right? So I dare say that for us to create all these kind of like optimization within the whole ecosystem and the value chain, some kind of regulation needs to come in, right? I don't know which stat board or department is responsible, but that's the only way to kind of like correct, right, what I would call market failures. Where the benefits go to certain people, but the detriment goes to another group. Just wanted to share that point.
Okay, thanks. Let me sum up the discussion so far. And so far, the question I asked is about what are the current issues that are holding us back. But I'm glad that some of the panelists have already started to venture into possible solution. Okay, so let me try to sum it up for clarity. And then I will also touch on the possible solution. And later, maybe right after this, we should discuss a bit more about those solutions. Mr. Lim talked about innovative business model. Sometimes it's about the failure is the business model side. So if we can adopt an innovative business model, any problem can become an opportunity, right? So this is one point. So sometimes we adopted very old business model in the BE environment. And sometimes it's not that because by choice, because that system has been upon us, accepted by all the stakeholders. It's not easy to break it out, right? You need all the stakeholders to agree that move away. So the business model we are talking about probably is not just a company business model, but a sectorial one. Okay, so this is the first point. Second point is that we need money and capital, right? You want to innovate, you do need to have resources, money, capital. Aaron also talked about resources. He's talking about time. Consultant actually is probably the bankrupt in time. They work 110% on the project. There's no capacity to think outside. But he said that that's not an excuse. Companies should figure out a way to, through organizational leadership, through setting the right culture, find a way, right, to provide resources for innovation, for R&D, right? Yeah, there was a talk about a market breakdown. That's Paul, right? Market breakdown. So sometimes market mechanism fail. So he started to offer a solution that actually these are a time when regulation has to come in to patch that breakdown, okay? So these are some of the regulations, one of the possible solution, innovative business model. But I myself would contribute to say that business model, you need both at the company level as well as the sectoral, okay, sectoral level. So with that, any other further thoughts on how do we take where we are, from where we are today to that vision that we talked about just now? Any other point to supplement? If not, it's okay, we can move on. Nothing, okay, all right. So let's, yeah.
I have one point. Yeah. I think emerging from all these kind of problem highlighted, don't you agree it come to one point? It come to a point that our sector need a bit of more collaboration. I think this is very important. Gone are the old days of construction industry, just build, look at drawing and build. Today, with so many constraints, with the after effect of COVID-19 and the war, seems like we are facing a lot of challenge, and we need to have a innovative way of dealing with this sort of problems for our BE sectors. So emerging from all this and the past 2.5 years experience, personally I feel that collaboration maybe is the time that we look at collaboration. I do a lot of PPPC jobs. It's a very classic example where, in fact, before COVID, I already have some form of collaboration or alliances. Actually, 60-70% of my subcontractors actually are my core partner. I have a lot of packages. To be frank, I never call for competitive bids. Because for success of PPPC, you need to have a continuity of work. You need to have a very good planning. And you need volumes to bring your cost effectiveness that I highlighted earlier. I've been emphasizing, we are in the business world. We need to be cost effective. No developer will look for me if I'm not cost effective. Let's be frank. So we need to play our part. Right? And moving forward, I think the industry needs a little bit more collaborativeness. Not necessarily must right from developer all the way down. I know it's tough, and never in our history, right? But think about all these. Frankly speaking, I have done the partnership with Subcon. I think it's very effective for me and very helpful. Otherwise, I wouldn't have completed my Avenue South on time, successfully. To be frank, my partners, all of them, play a very important part to help me gone through this journey of COVID-19.
Okay, thanks, Alan. So I take it that one of the solutions is partnership, right? With partnership, with alliance, it gives you some, it de-risks the business, right? It gives you some continuity in the business. That gives you that confidence to invest, right? Invest in the innovation. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just to add on that, of course, partnership and collaboration is an intention point, and how we can really work this in the pragmatic way. When I see the example of DBS in the bank, digitization, artificial intelligence, DBS know very clearly what I'm using, my credit card, my debit card, where I go, what I don't like, what I buy, right? It's similarly to that. When you really manage the integration between build, design, build, operate, and maintain, with the data, somebody mentioned about more open data, the data that can be shared within the segment and the ecosystem between different partners. This data will create a lot of intelligence. This data will take a lot of behavior aspects of how the buildings are utilized, how the buildings can be more efficient. I can tell one of the examples that we have softwares already that we can measure the decarbonization aspects of the building since we design, since we build, since we operate, and since we really maintain. So the full spectrum and cycle of the building that can be in a software monitored on the decarbonization level and KPI. So similar to that, I mean, there are many elements, of course, in axis of different perspective of angles and interest of the different part of the cycle, where can be the data-driven, bringing more collaboration and bringing more teamwork and more compromise.
Okay, thank you. Can I just have a time check? How much time are we left with?
I think we are overrun already. Yeah.
Do we have time to go on the second segment? No? Okay. Can I just take one or two questions from the floor, to be fair? Is there any question? Because I think we have, you know, like the Star Search recently, they keep widening. So I've been watching them, we have overrun. Is there any question on the floor? No? Okay, if not, then can you join me to thank the panelists for sharing their insights? Thank you.
All right, thank you, panelists, and really thank you for your time. And unfortunately, there's not enough time for us to continue this discussion, but I do hope that all of us continue these discussions beyond these four walls. All right, this brings us to the end of the BuildSG Lead Summit 2022, and on behalf of BCA, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers and panelists for being with us here today. But don't go yet. I know many of you are hungry. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that our Asia Pacific most anticipated built environment event, the International Built Environment Week, is happening on the 5th to the 9th of September this year, 2022. So I know some of you will be traveling, but do save this date and block out these dates. Hopefully I will see you there. All right, so thank you very much to our online participants. After you exit the webinar, you'll be directed to a QR code feedback form for our today's session. So help us improve our program, and we will see you next year. Thank you.